Hello, everyone! Welcome to the live X-Men Apocalypse Spoilercast. I'm your host, Captain Logan, and tonight we're going to talk for an hour or a little more about X-Men Apocalypse, the third in the X-Men prequel/reboot series. And let's go ahead and introduce my magnanimous panel. First of all, it is the uncanny Jackson Rasco.
Hello, peeps.
And he's the best at what he does, and what he does is awesome. It's Steve Maxey.
Hey, everyone.
And finally, it's Curious Low Forever.
Hello.
And naturally, I'm getting lag and stuff already, even though things were fine before we started broadcasting. So, welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching after the fact if you're doing that. Oh, wow. Is it that bad? Okay. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We've got X-Men Apocalypse. This is something that some of us, except for Steve Baxey, because Steve doesn't like X-Men, have been anticipating. And you heard Rasco and I talk about this a little bit the other day, and both he and I were somewhat disappointed with this one. I'll just throw that up right out the gate. But he and I talked before the show, and both saw it a second time, and both had different experiences. So we'll see what it's like talking about it now and getting into the nitty-gritty. And of course, this is a spoiler cast, so we'll be talking about everything under the sun and trying to give you an in-depth discussion about it. Let's start with Curious Low and find out how she felt about this movie. Low, as always, give me a best thing and a worst thing and just kind of an overall experience. Go ahead.
Best thing would probably be all of the, new, I have to put that in quotes because we've obviously seen them in X-Men films before, but our trio, I guess mostly, of the younger X-Men with Cyclops and Jean Grey and, what was his name, Kurt?
Nightcrawler,
yeah, Nightcrawler. I really liked everything going on with them. I was interested in their storyline, and I think they did a good job of establishing the seeds of the love story between Jean and Cyclops. What is his name, Scott? Without it being super like, these guys are meant to be together, blah. Like, I don't know. It felt natural, and I appreciated that because that could have gone not so swimmingly, but I really liked that whole plot line. My least favorite thing would probably be not all of the CGI, but some of the CGI. The opening title sequence was so... I laughed through it. I felt like I was watching like a 90s like sci-fi movie opening with its like zooming through, and like it could have been way cooler if it wasn't as glossy. It just, everything looked super shiny, and I don't think it should have. And yeah, there were a couple other moments that had that same sort of feel to them that I could just notice that the CGI was maybe rushed, or maybe they were going for that and it just didn't work for me. But that was definitely my least favorite thing, was just some of the CGI was not up to par, in my opinion.
Okay, just so everybody knows, at least right now, everybody's cutting in and out for me really bad, so hopefully things catch up and are okay. I don't know how behind I am or ahead for you guys, but anyway, somebody in the comments just said they're sorry to see that Shades isn't here. I wanted to mention that. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, Shades lives in Australia. It's middle of the night for him right now. It wasn't really possible for him to make it to this. I want to try to have him on to do something about this at some point, but I probably won't talk about it a third time. So I'll see if I can maybe get him and Dan together to talk about it, because I know people are really curious about his opinion. And at least on first viewing, he seems to like it better than a lot of other people. As soon as I read his post about it on Facebook, I was like, oh, okay, so Cyclops probably got less shafted, or not shafted at all, as he has before. And different people have different opinions about that, so we'll talk about that. Let's hear from Steve.
So I wasn't crazy about this movie. I don't think it's very good, but it's not bad exactly. It's just very substandard, and I have lots of issues with it, particularly from like a directing standpoint. I think this is a really poorly directed movie. We'll talk about some of that, but like some of those shots where Magneto's flying and you just see like a knee partially up and his hands kind of out and he looks like he's uncomfortably on wires, it just looks really bad in places. Bryan Singer for some reason or another, uses way too many close-ups. I don't know what it is about his camera work in this one, but it's really bad. But for the most part, it's an okay movie with a couple of glaring issues. And so I'll go ahead and say my best thing and worst thing are almost the same because they're really connected to each other. My worst thing is that this movie is absolutely tone deaf. It really doesn't seem to have any idea how dark it wants to be or how light it wants to be. The perfect example of this is after we get to the scene where Magneto's Magneto's family dies. And then we go into the factory, and he gives this speech about mothers and wives and daughters and the fact that the people in the factory betrayed him, and he gives this really dramatic performance, and he's completely hate-filled, and then Apocalypse shows up behind him, and he just drops an F-bomb and says, "Who are you?" It just completely undercuts the entire scene and everything that we got with him before that when he was holding his wife and his daughter in his arms. And then there's so many moments in this movie where we kept undercutting drama with comedy. And it really seems like, especially with the violence, this movie doesn't seem to understand how much of a cartoon it is versus how serious it is. And we'll talk about some more of those examples later. But then the best thing, I think, connected to Magneto is the performances. I really love the new cast. I think they're all really good. Michael Fassbender is amazing in this. I think he does a really good job with what little he gets to do. He gets the most character work, but it's pretty weak character work, and we'll talk about that as well. But that scene where he's holding his daughter and his wife, and he calls them my babies, and he's just bawling his eyes out, it's really well acted. I really liked it. Even if you don't like the storytelling, just his performance gives you the right emotion.
Rasco, what would you like to add or change or talk about from either day on or how we felt about it?
So the first time I saw this movie, it was incredibly overwhelming because it introduces so many characters, and unlike any other X-Men movie, I think that with most of the X-Men movies, they pick a very specific few characters, and then it's their movie. First Class, it's mainly about Charles and Eric, and Mystique and Beast are secondary characters of Charles and Eric, and then we have Shaw, who's the villain role. But so it's always there's always a couple main characters in X-Men, and this is a movie where I don't think there's a main character at all, and it's really weird because we set up a lot of things and pay them off. And so after I saw the movie a second time and saw just how much setup and payoff there is with every single character, I kind of started to like the movie more, but the problem is there's not a lot with each character. They just do a very small amount with each person, it really feels like to me. And I think that, by the end of the movie, there's a lot of... We could have gone farther with a lot of people, especially Quicksilver and Magneto. We could have gone farther with them. And we could have gone farther with Beast and Mystique, because I don't think that we concluded their relationship, and I think that Quicksilver was really needed to have a moment with Magneto, and that could have made Magneto's transition at the end a little bit more believable for me. But yeah, I somehow am starting to like the movie more though, because it does do things that I like with all of the characters. It's just not necessarily enough to warrant a movie in a lot of cases.
Yeah, this was in no way what I thought we would be getting with this movie, and making adjustments, and I hate to say, lowering standards. I don't know if it's that so much. It's just difficult not to have preconceptions and not to have certain expectations. You go into a thing like this after Future Past was so good, and had its issues, but was so good, and I don't know if I expected Apocalypse to trump it necessarily. That's a hard thing to follow, but certainly had really high expectations going into this, and adjusted a little bit, obviously, just seeing it once and knowing what it was doing, and went back and saw it again today, and I'm with Rasco. I liked it a lot better. There were a lot of thematic things that I picked up on that I didn't notice the first time around. I don't think that they make it a brilliant movie or anything, but I think there's a lot more going on with Apocalypse than I thought initially. And actually, it gave me some other issues thematically, and character-wise, which we'll talk about as we go along. But I liked the second time around, the kind of where Apocalypse was coming from, where he doesn't. I get the sense that Apocalypse doesn't even know what a mutant is. Like, I kind of like that idea. The Apocalypse really sees himself as a god, and you have people that are powerful and people that aren't. And even like the more lowly mutants with the really lame powers, like Apocalypse would have nothing to do with gold balls. Like, he wouldn't even care that he was a mutant. He would just be like, no, I'm not gonna use you for anything. You're done. You're a mulligan. That's it. And he kind of does that with Mystique, where it's like, oh, your power is just changing shapes, or changing your face. Who cares? That's not that useful to me. I need like really powerful, can quelch people kinds of powers. But as I said, that also ended up. So like comparing him to Magneto is interesting, because at first they seem like they have similar worldviews in that, you know, the strongest should survive, but Magneto is much more about his people and likes you and thinks that you are worthwhile if you are simply a mutant, no matter what your power was. So like if your power was simply turning your nose yellow, if you're a mutant, you're good for Magneto. He's maybe not going to use you in his Brotherhood because that's used, and that's one of the reasons that I didn't like the Magneto in X3. That's like the pawns go first. That's not Magneto to me. And so you know, looking at is interesting. But then the problem is he seems to go with Apocalypse way too easily. Where Apocalypse's worldview and what he wants, it seems to immediately not coincide with what Magneto would want, and it's just kind of an easy way for him to like get back at humanity in helping Magneto take over. But he's got to know that at some point he's going to start going after mutants. Like I don't know why he seems as gullible as all the other members on the team. Something that I also wanted to talk about the other day, Rasco, and didn't because I didn't want to spoil things, was at first I was really impressed, and now I don't impressed with them for not having the Four Horsemen be mind controlled, because that's what I expected, and I think that's how that's what the Four Horsemen are usually, or at least like brainwashed to the point where they're not really them anymore. Like we always separate like Angel from Archangel; they're not really the same character. He gets you know kind of with, and in this first time around, I thought that they weren't doing that at all, and that Apocalypse was just appealing to their sensibilities, and then at the end, two of them turn against him, and two of them don't, and the two that probably shouldn't turn against him don't, and I like that, although Angel does appear to die, and I don't like that, because he got even less to do and no character arc from what he had in X3, so that was a strange choice, if that's what's going on, but it was just kind of an explosion, and I don't know, maybe we'll bring him back somehow. I didn't see a body, so, you know, comic book movies.
I did.
Twice. I was looking for it this time, and I still didn't see it. Where is it? It's like
it's
Waldo. I can't find the dead Angel body.
It's just his head, and you see his head is like gashed open, and he's like dead. He looks dead. It's at the bottom of the screen. It's really weird.
But what I'm wondering now is if there isn't, having seen it a second time, is if there isn't some bit of mind control, or at least some like some kind of persuasion power that happens. And we know that Apocalypse can't get into minds and control them, but he's able to, I guess, block people from telepathy and do some things that he's limited, but he can do some slightly telepathic-esque things. And he's able to just kind of look at a person and make them interested in his way of thinking to some degree. But then you get to the end, and Storm seems to turn on him maybe a little bit too easily, too much on a light switch. Or is it just as simple as
Storm?
I didn't realize you were going to go after
switch actually really works.
Okay.
Yeah. In the beginning of the movie, like the first thing we see with Storm is when she like brings Apocalypse into her home, and she like has the poster of Mystique, and she's like, great warrior, I want to be like her.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, that's right. So it's just.
And then there's that
yeah. So she sees him like grab Mystique, and then that's it. Yeah.
And then there's a reaction shot of her, and she's seeing Apocalypse like choking the life out of her like hero that she wants to be like. So I kind of bought that story turn there at the end.
I still feel like that's kind of simplistic though, because we don't understand why Storm's with Apocalypse, and then when we get to Apocalypse choking her out and he changes sides, I don't understand why she was on Apocalypse's side to begin with. That if Apocalypse's plan worked, Mystique probably would have died. So what changes when she finally sees
why Storm is with Apocalypse, I think what they think, and maybe they just don't convey this enough, is that like Storm's with Apocalypse because Apocalypse is like, look, like we all have all this power, and he's like, and she's like, you can't just go around killing people. There are systems in place for that, and it's like Storm has all this power, but because of these like systems in place, this person with all this just natural power is like reduced to like a petty thief, and Apocalypse like appeals to her in that way where he's like, look, he's like, the strong should be the ones that get to do whatever they want.
They don't make that anything like explicit.
And then that brings up another problem.
But I've heard them talk about this. That's why I know that. But it's not conveyed enough necessarily, and it's all done in like non-dialogue.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense.
I get the Storm.
But then it just gets to the question of like, okay, she's abused by power systems. What are the systems? Like, I agree that there are power systems of oppression, but which systems? You have to tell me these things,
But the thing is, when she says systems, she just says things in place, just like rules. Like, she uses the word system, which usually is used in a negative context, but it's also a word to describe that. Like, I get that she is a street rat and stealing to survive and kind of a rebel and all of that, but in the context that she's saying that to Apocalypse, she says that's not heroic. She's like, if you want to be a hero, you can't just go around killing people. She doesn't seem to be opposed to everything about those systems. When she says, and like, it would be difficult to find her sympathetic if she's like, yeah, let's get rid of all the systems so you can kill people and be a hero. I don't know what that means. That makes no sense. So yeah, they're not making that explicit, and I'm a little surprised that we're back to throwing in too many characters and not giving them enough to do and not making it clear enough who each of them are, especially given that we're kind of rehashing some stuff with characters we've had for a while, and we'll get into this, especially with Professor Xavier, that are not only rehashed but also seem somewhat out of character. And I mean, like, I think if we were going to bring in this many new characters, the right thing to do would have been to focus more on them and let Professor X and Magneto be a little bit more in the background, or not have Magneto there at all. Let me ask you guys this. This would be a good place to plunge into some story stuff. I questioned, and maybe you guys will turn me completely around on it, it's just a thing I question. I questioned Magneto running off and having a family and not working toward his goals anymore. I wasn't sure I bought that the end of Days of Future Past, because of what Mystique did, would be Magneto gives up everything and is no longer trying to create the world where they're in charge. I just wasn't sure, but like I would have almost, I could have almost seen a movie where he's got a brotherhood already. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
That was one of my issues as well, because there's stuff about Magneto having a family and losing it that I like, because that is from the comics, and there's some really good stuff with him and Magnus and losing his family and killing people over it. But, like you said, at the end of Apocalypse, or not at the end of Days of Future Past, he is set on a goal. This whole movie just sets up a divide between the representation of Magneto to the public and the representation of Mystique to the public, and then we just play on the Jennifer Lawrence Mystique half, and we just ignore the Magneto half. And I don't understand that. Now, okay, he's famous now, so maybe he needs to go into hiding. But going into hiding and at the same time giving up everything and having a family aren't consistent with each other. He can go into hiding and still have a brotherhood of some kind. It's really bizarre that they just give all that up and give him a family. I don't understand where that comes from. Why he says, I want to try things Charles's way, after all that happened in Days of Future Past is that he lost. Yeah,
and then turns on a dime too quickly, even though he lost his family. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just too easy. It comes off at, like, you're right, Steve, it's played well. With as many characters as we have, we got, I guess, as much screen time as you could expect to have for that. But the problem is, it comes off like we just need a contrivance for Magneto to be trying to kill people again, and because we've decided he's going to be one of the Horsemen.
And how contrived
really problematic.
By the way, where like not only are his wife and daughter hugging each other perfectly, but the guy who's not even looking at where he's shooting lets go of the arrow and kills them instantly, despite the fact that there were animals and wind everywhere and that would shift an arrow. It's really contrived.
Yeah, if Magneto, and I mean, I know people are going to argue with me on this. I get that in the middle of a really traumatic situation like that, you might kind of lose it. But the thing, and like he's not going to be thinking clearly and stuff. But I thought Professor X kind of helped him get a little bit away from the serial killer mentality. He's right back where he was at the beginning of First Class now, right? Like he's just a serial killer again, which is my huge issue with Professor X at the end when he invites him to stay. That's insanity. Yeah. And we'll get to that. But like
but Cap,
at the beginning,
there's still good in him. Didn't you hear them say that 80 times?
Yeah. Do you remember the part, Lo, in Days of Future Past where they're on the airplane and they're arguing and he doesn't really believe in him or trust him anymore at all? I mean, okay, so he doesn't have telepathy anymore, but during that sequence, but yeah, like no, things between those two characters have changed. We can't forget the line at the end of First Class, when Magneto says we want the same things, and he says, "No, my friend, we do not." Even if he sympathizes with them and appreciates where he's coming, they don't want the same things. At the very, very, very least, Magneto at that school sounds like a recipe for disaster. At the very least, but in the scene where first of all, like Steve was saying, the arrow flies and really contrived moment. Both of his family get killed. That was kind of a CW Arrow moment, and not just because it was an arrow in play. Like that was an Arrow moment. But like for a minute, I was okay with it. For a minute, they had me where he shoots the coin off, and it's a coin again. I mean, we're trying to bookend things. We're trying to have some poetry and go back to First Class.
He shoots the coin off. It's a pendant with a picture of his mom and dad.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so he shoots that off, and so then that has nothing to do with First Class. Forget that. So then that ties into the Auschwitz thing, which I was talking to Matt today from Who Reviews Through, and he brought this up, and I hadn't even thought of this. He was like, "Isn't that kind of a double beat? Do we need the Auschwitz thing when he loses his family, his like new family in this? Like, does he need that extra motivation? Like he's already thinking about his family for like did Apocalypse need to do that?" That's not a thing I had thought of. He might be right about it. But the Locket gets shot out and kills everybody, kills all the people right there really fast, and he's got powers that he can make this kind of thing happen, you know, at the snap of of his fingers. And then he looks up and he's talking to God and he says, "Is this what you want from me?" And like, if I could have seen things from there going in a direction where I would have bought it, but I feel like everything drops from then on. You can't tell me that there aren't innocent human beings in the scene where he was about to kill everybody at the place he works. Now, I realize Apocalypse kills all of them, but I'm pretty sure he was also going to kill all of them.
He was going to kill all of them. That's kind of like he's lost it at that point. But then, again, we won't really know what his mentality was because we undercut a really dramatic speech with an F-bomb for no reason.
If he's decided that he... Okay, so if he's decided that he's just against all humanity now and he's blaming humanity... you know, maybe okay, but like there's a couple of problems with that too. I don't know if his wife was a mutant.
She doesn't seem like she was.
I don't know, that's a thing. And then so what I said earlier, like I know people are going to argue with me about this, but okay, the but part is when he decides to kill everybody really quick. He doesn't even consider that it was an accident. I mean, like, he's not looking directly at that guy. We see the guy accidentally fire, but like, it's a really extenuating circumstance where like the birds are flying everywhere, but then also he hates them for trying to take him away from his family and stuff too. So I don't know. I'm just saying that bits about it work and bits about it are really problematic, and it kind of needs to be much more of the crux of the story. To have any time to flesh it out, I think. But then, I don't know, because then we just saw Civil War handle 16 characters. really complex ways and manage it. And that's also part of the reason I think a lot of people are really down on this movie, is that it's a whole bunch of characters and not done that deftly.
I'll say that certainly factors into my enjoyment of it. Like, you watch something as deep and complex as Civil War, and then you come to this, and you do kind of have to lower your expectations to get the same level of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I don't mean to compare them too much. I'm not saying one is bad because the other one is good. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a thing we just saw recently, and it's difficult for it not to affect your expectation and your enjoyment of it. Anyway, I just jumped around and talked about all kinds of things. Anybody want to piggyback off anything?
I didn't feel like there were too many characters in the movie. I mean, like, I don't think particularly any of them were, like, really delved into, like, crazy deep or anything, but I wasn't confused, I guess, about any of the characters or where they were, or even really for the most part why they were doing things, even if it was very just sort of base level as far as what was going on with their characters. In general, I really liked this movie. I mean, I didn't think it was, like, amazing or anything, but I definitely enjoyed most of it, and I guess I wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's too many characters and I don't care about any of them because it's just so full of people. It wasn't Civil War by any means, but I would disagree with you on that point, at least from my point of view.
Does it feel a little bit like the Days of Future Past thing, where there's very clearly a movie between these two X-Men movies? Like, with Days of Future Past, the way it opened, I always felt like there should have been a movie between First Class and Days of Future Past, and I feel the same way here.
I think I talked about this with Cap, or maybe it was with, like, Connor or somebody, but I might have mentioned this with you,
No,
Cap,
you
last
didn't.
night after we recorded that video.
Yeah.
So I said that, like, in X-Men Days of Future Past, it's like the point of that is, like, we kind of, like, just jump into a random time in the First Class timeline. Like, it's kind of interesting because you go into that not knowing what the status quo is, and you discover this really strange and backward and not what you would think would be status quo. And like, this is kind of weird now because it's like we're jumping so many years between this movie and the last movie, and then even the next movie is going to be in, like, it's going to be so many years after this movie. Like, it's going to be in the 90s. So it's really weird that we're jumping so much time now, because, like, the only real reason we jumped so much time with that movie was because it was supposed to be, like, abruptly, randomly, you jump into this random moment in the First Class timeline, and now, like, you get to explore that status quo.
Yeah,
But
it feels a little too arbitrary, but then the problem, and as we discussed before, Rasco, is we did know that they were going to do that. I mean, that was going to be a problem regardless, but I guess it feels more problematic now that we've seen it. I'm with Rasco. It works really well, and I don't agree with Steve that there should have been a movie in between, or that even feels like there should be a movie in between. The nice thing about Days of Future Past is I have seen so many time travel things in episodes of TV and stuff where people come back to the present day of wherever you are in the show simply because that's where you are the show now. And it's really nice that we jump to where we jump to 73 in Days of Future Past just because that's where they wanted to tell that story, and that's where it makes most sense to tell the story.
Well,
why are we just checking in at random time periods now, except to not spend too many movies catching up to present day? And then that makes things problematic because some things feel a little bit too convenient to just all be happening at the same time. Some of that they fix with the situation, right? Where, like, we bring in the New Mutants, we bring in for the most part because of Apocalypse, and so that's good. He's like, these are the people I want to grab, and then that's a situation where it makes sense to have these particular mutants that you want to get thrown in there. Cyclops was a strange, or excuse me, Psylocke was a strange choice, I think. But like, you know, got all those people in there. Cyclops coming in right now in the middle of all this is maybe a convenient thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that as a critique of First Class or even of this, but it just makes the bigger problem with these X-Men movies then becomes that First Class, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, and then conceivably whatever we get next with the 90s movie, they all have exactly the same first act.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to get the group back together and introduce New Mutants and everything. And sometimes it's interesting, like Days of Future Past, because it's a complete reversal of everything we've seen before. But this time it's just weird. Like, this time it's just, I've seen this already, get to the point.
Honestly, I think part of the problem is there might have been a more interesting impetus to get Apocalypse here in the first place. Like, it's immediately interesting to parallel the opening scene from Days of Future Past and parallel this one, because they're both these big, spectacular action scenes with a bunch of people with superpowers doing things, and one takes place in the future and then sends us to the past, and way in the future, and the next one goes although much more farther into the past, opens in ancient Egypt and propels us into the future. Might have been cool if there was more of an interesting reason for Apocalypse to have to awaken now, like there was an interesting reason for Professor X to send Wolverine back to the time he did in Days of Future Past, as opposed to just using Moira to make that happen. Especially because I can't help but wonder, and I don't want to make too big of a deal out of continuity, especially because these movies have decided it doesn't matter, even though they spent a whole movie really creatively soft rebooting it. But I can't help but wonder if this happened in the original timeline. Like, did Apocalypse ever pop up there? Probably not exactly now, because if Moira is partly the catalyst, am I right about that? I'm still wondering about this, Rasco, that she has anything to do with the reason he pops out.
She has to, yeah, she does, because she moves that rug, and then the sun shines through the rug through the.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
No, it was she's tracking people that are worshiping mutants, that are worshiping them because of what happened in Days of Future Past, and they raise Apocalypse, and she's just there when it happens. Like, she's watching them chant, and then the rocks
they
form, and
raise
then
him?
she comes out.
But she also
that.
does move the rug, though. Like, the facts, because they make a point to show that the sun
I
is
think
shining
they're just a
down
crazy,
through
like,
that
cult, and
cave.
they're just there praying to that. Like, I think they just do that. I don't think that they were actually affecting it at all. I think it was.
I don't know,
because
I thought what it was is that, like, after their chant ended, then the thing started activating. Even with the sunlight added in, I thought it was like them consciously activating it.
Oh, maybe it was like the combination, but I know that the sunlight was the part, because you see that later on. Like, that happens 3 different
about
times.
this is a problem. Can I just throw that out there? The fact that we can't decide means the movie did not make it explicit enough.
Yeah, because that's the weird thing with that is, like.
So
I felt like it was explicit,
mixed with magic crap. Like, it's really hard to decipher where that comes from, how that works.
Yeah.
Like, I would have called it very. I mean, like, I feel like it was extremely explicit. Like, I would have called it very obvious that, like, the whole point, because they had multiple camera angles that were, like, showing the open pit and, like, showing the sunlight going through the cave, and then showing the sunlight come and hit the thing, and they showed all the hieroglyphs, like, going down into the cave, and I felt like that was fairly explicit. That was the reason that he was raised, was because of the sunlight.
I get that.
Because they've been praying to him lots of times. Like, it just so happens that this time she had sun added to the mixture. I don't know. I guess it didn't confuse me. Maybe it should have.
I guess I just feeds into some of, like, I feel like Apocalypse as an entity is really confusing altogether anyway. Like, for one, I kind of get his power set and I kind of don't. If he can just, like, incinerate people, why doesn't he just incinerate everyone by the end of the movie?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I made it a mission to pay such close attention to what Apocalypse does and does not do with his powers, just to see if I could create some sort of outline for what they are. And here's the thing. It's a really confusing effect, but he's not disintegrating those people in that factory when he just, like, snaps and they're, like, all gone. He makes the floor, like, they phase into the floor, and then he, like, because, you know, he, like, throws Cyclops into the wall at one point and, like, makes him, like, into the wall. And then earlier when he first meets Storm and those guys, he, like, pushes that guy into the wall. Like, he just, like, makes them fall into the floor.
So why doesn't he do that with being attacked at the end?
Twitching and stuff.
Yeah, because they're
you like see that they're all, like, sticking out of the.
He also had no reason not to just kill Cyclops there and put him farther into the wall like he did with that guy earlier.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, at the end, why doesn't he just kill everyone?
He's partially out just so that we can save him, so Beast can come in and slam the wall and get him out.
His energy. It was just his energy cap. He was low.
Okay. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of things like that are just not quite made clear enough. The power set was odd and seemed to be almost intentionally vague.
Yeah. Because he can power up storm and make costumes out of sand or something, and it's got the transference power.
Does the helmet block telepathy now? I wonder about that. I wonder if he knows how to rig it up so that it has the technology in it that the Russians made that does that.
How does he know to give Magneto a helmet? Did Magneto explain to him? You know, at the one point I had like this helmet that kind of looked like this thing.
How does he know about Auschwitz? I mean, like, here's the thing. He can't get into people's minds, but he knows everything about them. And I don't understand that. Like, what am I missing? And that makes me think there's something I just am missing. I don't understand that. He seems to know a bunch of stuff about these people.
Yeah, I don't really get it. He's a really weird villain.
It's kind of played like when a psychic tries to like, or like a telekinetic a telepathic tries to like communicate with him. He's so powerful he can like reverse it, and like he can get into their mind when you go into his mind. That's how they play it. Like that's what it's supposed to be, I'm pretty sure.
That's weird. And see, that brings me to the other thing of like, okay, he can get into Xavier's mind and make it so everyone's launching nukes. Why didn't he just make the nukes land on Earth and kill everyone instead of going through the whole Magneto plan?
Because they broke the connection and the nukes were out of orbit, I think.
Yeah, it seems like he's picked a weird order to do things in, because it seems like he's not really threatened by the only thing that would threaten him are the nukes. So to be fair, Steve, I think maybe you're wrong. I think the whole idea is let's just get rid of the nukes.
Yeah, but why get rid of the nukes? Like, if his whole thing is to take out humanity, why would he consciously send all the nukes flying instead of just using them to wipe out the people except for the ones that can't survive?
Here's why. It's important that he doesn't do that because he keeps talking about how people have faith in so many things. So like Xavier's thing is at the end, he's like, you're alone and I am not. And Xavier has faith in people, but he has this thing against like relying on things. So he's like you rely on your missiles and your weapons and all these things. Yeah, whereas like Apocalypse just has like pure power himself. He's not relying on anything but his own power that is part of who he is. And like he thinks that like that's like a crutch, is like people have faith that these things will work. They rely on so many other things working.
But again, we could have made it. Like, this could have made the slope of Apocalypse's logic, because, okay, a person makes a nuke, but a person also makes a sword, so is Psylocke being less apocalypsy just because she's using a sword? Like, it just gets...
That's like her... Like, she has, like, a power, though, so, like, it's weird.
Yeah, but it's just weird, though. Like, I get what he's coming from, but at the same time, he wants to do a very specific thing. Why not just use humanity's reliance on technology to end them, and then just rule the Earth? Like, it just feels weird that he needs to make that point and make things more difficult for him.
Well, he's also way out of time. Like, he's got, I think, like, a point of the Apocalypse, he's got, like, way too simplistic of a perception of the world. It's so barbaric and just, like, I want to kill other people. And he's so powerful, and, like, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but the thing is, like every other character, it's only like they just barely work with each character, and they really don't focus on a single character. And they set up things like they set up Cyclops as if he is one of the like main characters of this film. Like we get an introduction scene with him, and we're like following him to the Institute, and like he's kind of leading the X-Men on like this shenanigans at the mall, and then on this like little mission to Alkali Lake. And like a lot of the mall scenes were apparently cut. Like apparently there was a lot more scenes there that we didn't get to see. But like,
you mean there were scenes there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there were scenes there besides them walking out of the theater. And so, like, it's just, they set him up like he's the main character. And I kind of like what they did with Cyclops a little bit, but, like, there's just not enough there to talk about.
Here's the thing. That's not a giant problem for me, though, because, and maybe we could be a little bit clearer about what exactly this movie is supposed to be, I guess. My issues are more just with the with the villain plot, just with the main ideas that the film is dealing with were a little bit too surface and were a little bit too superficial. But that's all setup stuff, Rasco, and it is a setup movie. And maybe it's just we got more to do with those characters than I thought we would. But I liked his and Jean Grey's first meeting a lot more than I thought I would. Especially because I had this weird experience where I didn't like either of those actors at the beginning, and then I was fine with them by the end. And I had that twice. Their first scene together is not that good to me, and then after that, I'm kind of fine with them. It's strange. And yes, Phoenix is used as a big Deus Ex Machina at the end. But those two characters are not. I don't think they're playing them like they're central to the movie so much as we want to get a good start for them so that they can be central later on. I don't think you would be complaining about that so much, Rasco, if the Professor X and Magneto stuff worked better.
I'm not really complaining about it though, because like I said, I like everything they do, and I understand what the movie's trying to do, and it's trying to do a lot of different things, and it's things that are really hard to try to make work, and so they almost kind of don't. They just kind of do separate things at the same time. They kind of just do the setup movie and the concluding trilogy thing, and they don't really ever try to fully make it either of those things. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like they were really trying to do that, so it's kind of hard to fault them for it.
Yeah, I get the feeling from this movie, especially with the Return of the Jedi joke, that Bryan Singer was consciously not trying to top Days of Future Past. He was just trying to make another X-Men movie, which is fine, but then at the same time, it goes into just my issue at the beginning, which is the movie's really tone-deaf. And so at points, it just wants to be fun and an X-Men adventure, and at points, it wants to be really dark and serious and move the plot along and do a commentary on superpowers, both in the Cold War sense and in the mutant sense. And then a lot of that stuff falls through because they don't balance each other out at any point. I feel like the perfected version of this movie would be like Age of Ultron.
Yeah, this idea of using Apocalypse to talk about when to use powers and when not to, and the importance of learning how to control them, but might there be times where you should just let yourself loose, and all of that is a good idea. It doesn't quite come together, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, like Vasco said, there's lots of good setup and payoff, and I like what they want to do with it. I just don't think they really get there most of the time.
If you don't want to top Days of Future Past, though, I question Apocalypse as the villain.
Yeah, that's just another big thing with these movies, is that X-Men are metaphors for growing up and civil rights and stuff like that. Why do we keep trying to do big, massive end-of-the-world plots? I don't want Dark Phoenix next. Just do a story with teenagers learning to handle their powers. It's really
that would be my favorite movie ever.
Right? Yeah, I don't understand the logic in putting Apocalypse in here, especially if you don't want to try and do Days of Future Past all over again.
I also don't even like it as a title because it never feels like we get anywhere close to an actual apocalypse.
Also, did I ever call him Apocalypse? I feel like...
Yeah, here's the thing about that. So that's the most awkward scene in the whole movie. Is when Moira is talking to Professor X and Beast, and they have this double name drop thing for Apocalypse, right? And because Beast says, is it Beast that's in that scene? This is such a weird scene.
It's Havoc. It's Havoc.
Thank you. It's Havoc. Havoc says the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And then a couple lines later, she's like, he's going to start some kind of apocalypse. I'm like, he just said the word apocalypse. So the way it comes off is she's like, I have one, I want to make a parody to this scene where she goes, it's like some kind of what's that word he just used? That was a good one. Yes, apocalypse. Yeah. He's going to make that thing happen. No, we never actually call Apocalypse. We call him his Egyptian name, which I'm totally fine with. I also
fine, but I didn't even catch it.
Just say Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and you're good, because that's not a forced drop for the bad guy name. And so many of these things end up having forced name drops for the bad guy. You already got it in there in a completely organic way. Why then do that? It's hilarious.
The weirdest thing about the conflict in this movie is that it arises so fast. This movie goes from things are fine to things are going bad so quickly, and it's oh my god, and that's what makes it feel so jarring, because while I'm watching the second half, sometimes it's hard to understand why things are related to each other, and if they are at all, Stryker coming in and kidnapping some of them. Because thematically, that stuff really doesn't have anything to do with the main plot.
Yeah,
and
Rascal, that's
all of
fine.
it just happens at once.
Rasco, that works. And I didn't like it first time either, but second time around, the Stryker thing works. What's confusing is the fact that they're at Weapon X. That's what's weird about it, because Stryker is a general, and he's dealt with mutants before, so it totally makes sense that he would get the call. I don't know what Weapon X is. I don't know if that's his pet project that nobody knows about, or if it's a secret thing that somebody in the government has sanctioned. I don't know what it is in this context, and whatever it was before and whatever it is in the comics, you can't point to that because we've changed it. So I don't know what it is now. It could be anything. And we should talk about that with Wolverine and stuff. But there's a line where he's talking about how they found out that the place where the signal came from, that was transmitting Apocalypse's message, was at the school, and so then he was sent out to go there. So like they worked it in okay.
Well, see, they explain why he's there.
Yeah.
If you cut it out, you don't need it though.
That makes
like it
sense.
stops the plot.
Yeah, that's the point. Like, I just don't know. Like, it really feels like we kind of then divert. And
yeah.
Eric would say
hold
almost
on,
in a similar way
they
they handle Spider-Man in Civil War, where like it goes to this other thing where we're kind of seeing things that are kind of building upon the characters. Like, I think that actually maybe Mystique's arc kind of does tie in with them being like trapped there on their own, and like they have that whole conversation when they're riding in the plane together, and like ties in with Mystique's arc. But like, I don't know, it's like, let's go check in with Wolverine really quick, and it's kind of weird. I don't know.
Well, but see, here's the thing. I think you could have done interesting things with Stryker there, potentially. Yes, it is ultimately just a forced-in thing to get. I guess I'm just surprised that it's not more forced than it is, that there's actually an explanation for why he's there. Because first viewing, I was, the mansion blew up, and they were just waiting for that to happen. So, like, but I buy that the government, because here's the thing you're not talking about, Rascal. You still have the humans hate and fear us thing, and the relations are better right now because of the Mystique thing from 10 years ago, but it's still potentially volatile. I liked that line just because I forget what exactly it was, but like just because there's no war right now doesn't mean that like there's not there's not friction, there's not problem, and that there might not be a war. If this happened, the government would be like, we've got to find out where Professor Xavier. Like, I like the fact that the humans are trying to solve their own problem, and this is how they're doing that: is that they send the general to go talk to the people who would know where Professor X is. So like, it's not fair. It's not fair to say that there shouldn't be government stuff mixed in there, and that it doesn't, and that it shouldn't serve the story. It's just ultimately nothing else is done with that, because then they escape. So it does feel like an interlude. But I am saying that I just think that it makes sense that it would happen.
Well, I think part of the problem is it's the same thing as Man of Steel, where like we don't actually spend any time with humans. We spend time with mutants and the military. And so we never really explore this, oh no, mutants are kind of okay, but there's a little bit of friction here and there. We don't ever actually like stop and see a mutant's life dealing with people or people dealing with mutants. We have the opening thing with Cyclops, but that's more of just the guy wants to beat him up because he was looking at his girlfriend. Like, there's no real explanation of that.
Serve just that. Like, if they put some of that mall, because I imagine like that could be great scenes. Like, you have this Nightcrawler, this blue guy walking with these kids. This guy has got these weird glasses on, and like there's just easily like it feels like maybe that was there and they just cut it out. Who knows?
Yeah, like I feel like we just need to explore some of that more is all. Like I like the idea of mutants being allowed, but just not like integrated in society perfectly yet. But we don't do anything with it. There's no reason why Nightcrawler can't just walk around and we don't see stuff with that.
You're right that it's all military when we do get humans, and Moira, because...
Well, she's CIA, so I mean, it's basically...
Oh, okay, all right. Because when you get to the end, then whenever we see humans, it's just military guys standing in rooms in order to give us, expository dialogue, just like Man of Steel, like you were saying. Yeah. It all goes back to Dr. Strangelove. Let me ask you guys a couple questions. With regards to the Moira thing, I didn't care for the interactions with Professor X and Moira at all. The first couple times that he was like stumbling over his words and hoping that he could rekindle something with her and stuff again were okay, but the more we did it, the more half unsympathetic he seemed to me because of the mind wipe thing. That was far too on his mind, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I found myself questioning, and I can't tell you why without exploring it, but I found myself questioning why he didn't let her in on everything earlier. Like, what exactly is it that changes by the end that has him go, okay, now I'm gonna accept? I mean, I guess it's just that he's that he doesn't want to be like Apocalypse, right? Where like it's like I don't want to take advantage of human beings like he is. And then, like I've said forever with the X movie, except for X3 because they took it too far, I want to explore the moral ambiguity of Professor Xavier, and we touch on it here, but we don't make it as morally ambiguous as it is, or we don't make it seem as morally ambiguous as it actually is. So anyway, I don't know. I'm talking myself out of my own argument. Okay, that works. I still don't like the way they interact at all.
Yeah, the weird thing with the whole Moira thing is that, like, by the end, Xavier's like, I think what it is that the whole point is, like, Apocalypse kind of is like, rely on myself. I want to be, like, and once he learns about Xavier's power, he's like, I can be everyone, I can be everything. And even his horsemen he's not there to, like, fulfill their, like, wants and needs, really. They're just there to serve the will of the one, the will of the most powerful, him. And Xavier with Moira, I think the idea is it all kind of comes back to that Xavier line where he's like, you'll lose because you're alone and I'm not. And his whole thing is that he's got faith in people, and him wiping Moira's mind wasn't him, like, having faith in her to keep the secret of where the X-Men were located, which is kind of funny because that secret's blown now. But, like, at the end of the First Class, that's why he wipes her mind. He knows that she'll never divulge, like, where they are, but he doesn't necessarily believe that, like, he has doubts, so he wipes her mind there. And, like, it ties back somewhat thematically, but it's just whether or not you buy that, I guess.
No, that actually works fine now that we're talking about it. I like the idea, but and we don't have to spell things out too much, but it would be cool if he had a conversation maybe after that with someone where he's like, there have been times where I have kind of, and Rascal, it's not just about his not having faith in people, it's about his using people and using humans specifically. That he doesn't want to be Apocalypse and he doesn't want to be Magneto, and that's a lot of why his inviting Magneto back to the mansion is a huge problem. These are mutants that see humans as objects to be used. I really like that moment in the third act where Apocalypse with Psylocke or someone, I forget who it is like useless. Like he's trying to make them think that he's going to give them what they want, but he's just using them as pawns. And these are mutants. These are people with powers that he can use, but he still sees himself as God. And so, like, no matter how powerful a person is, if he's more powerful than them, he's going to see himself as God. And I also like this idea of that you were talking about, Rasco, of his wanting to be everyone, not just rule everyone, but be everyone. That's cool. That's also Ultron.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. That just goes back to my point of, like, if you want to see the perfect version of this movie, just watch Age of Ultron.
The thing is,
kind of done that a little bit, but they were being made somewhat at the same time.
Yeah, Apocalypse is one of those characters where he just has a bunch of, like, a lot of speeches where he just goes on rants, and Ultron does that too in Age of Ultron. I know a lot of people that are just kind of casual fans of the Marvel movies that don't like Age of Ultron as much, and I think that, like, Ultron's a character that, like, you just really have to pay attention to what he's saying, and there's really interesting things there, and sometimes people kind of, like, tune it out as, like, evil villain maniacal ranting, and they don't actually listen to what characters are saying.
But see, that's what I did with this movie, Rasco, is I kind of tuned Apocalypse out as evil, random, maniacal ranting. And once I started listening to him, he got more interesting, but it still shouldn't have been this movie, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's really weird because it's like they're trying to. It's really strange that like these don't seem like things that you would put together. Like you're trying to set up a bunch of characters and you simultaneously do this giant, huge villain threat. And I think a lot of that comes from them like trying to parallel First Class, because at the end of the movie there's that whole scene where it's like all of them on the ship riding together and they're talking about Mystique's first mission and everything. And Apocalypse is kind of like this like super powerful mutant that has all these like henchmen mutants behind him. And so it's like trying to do a similar thing, and then like it has like the anti First Class ending where by the end it's like everyone's on good terms with each other kind of, and they're all coming together, and it's like it's the time when they're gonna all be together, I guess. And like it's weird. It's trying to like parallel First Class at the end.
I also think part of Professor X's arc, and I don't know if I buy it, is supposed to be deciding that the school can't just be a school, and that Mystique is right, and that they need soldiers. And I don't know that that Apocalypse's plot is enough to get him there. That's a pretty isolated incident, right? Like you got a guy that comes back from eons ago, and then at the end of the movie, all of a sudden, Professor X is like, you know what? You're like, I feel like there's a scene missing. It's like, yeah, and now let's train them as soldiers. I think
the other thing could be like Professor X knows that like mutants like Jean exist. Like imagine like their lucky Jean is under their tutelage because like
we saw what happened in
that girl growing up in a really rough, like in some other environment where they don't have a figure there to help them master their abilities. Like that's a really dangerous thing. Maybe it could be a bunch of different things, but the thing is like it's not talked about enough. Like it's not like they just don't go far enough with any of with a lot of the ideas.
Yeah, I guess I can be made to buy some of the X-Men stuff at the end more because Mystique's the one in charge of them, and Mystique basically is just Magneto, but on Charles' side. And the idea of someone who is more Martin Luther King, completely peace-driven, having a group of fighters was always weird to me in the comics. So Mystique being the bridge between the X-Men as a fighting force and Charles Xavier works for me. But like you guys said, it just isn't talked about enough.
Yeah, it works as a thing that they could get to, but that shot at the end, and I mean really well acted, where he's looking through the door and he looks really uncomfortable and not happy. You know, like the look on his face says this is necessary, but almost a necessary evil. I'm telling you, there's a scene missing. It's like at some point he and Mystique maybe had some kind of dialogue about this, where it's like, what if we had another threat like this, or what if wouldn't it be great if we had that scene? You saw how extremely powerful Jean Grey is. What if there's one of her out there, but she doesn't come to our school? You know, like we could have had that conversation. This movie with this third act could have easily gotten us there. But man, that look through that door is really strange with no context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rasco, let's get some questions from the audience. Folks are asking us to talk directly to them, and we've been.
I saw one question a while ago, and they wanted us to touch on how Mystique at the end of Days of Future Past had Wolverine and that whole thing that is completely dropped.
Yeah, well, that was the big thing I wanted to make sure we talked about. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll get to some other things that people want us to talk about. I have been speculating about that for 2 years. May I say real quick, by the way, before I forget to say this, that 2 years, I think a lot of the problem with this movie is it just needed more time. And I don't mean more runtime. I mean it needed to come out a year or two after this. And part of the problem is like it's only been 2 years. People weren't like chomping at the bit for another X-Men movie. Like for whatever reason, X-Men is a franchise that is kind of best with like 3 or 4 years in between, or like an ongoing TV series, like one of those two things. But if you don't give us enough time in between, people start to see it as kind of obligatory. Okay, we got another X-Men, and especially since we're doing spin-offs and offshoots, and we've got Deadpool and stuff. This wasn't the year to put this out. Now, Fox had no idea Deadpool was going to do as well as it did, but if they had known that, there's no way they put this movie out this year, because a lot of people are going to think that Deadpool was a lot better than this movie, and this is the tentpole, X-Men franchise. So, and he's not going to make as much money as Deadpool, I would imagine. Although I don't know about that. I might be wrong about that, but
it probably won't. It had not a bad opening weekend, but certainly much weaker. Like it was projected for like 120, and then that number kept dropping until they got to like 80. and now they're just barely getting to that. So
okay.
Deadpool is the highest-grossing action movie there is. I don't think this is going to.
And
get
Deadpool stuck around in theaters for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to get there. Especially considering that we're in the summer, Suicide Squad's coming out, lots of summer blockbuster random stuff is happening every week now. It's just not going to get the same run.
So you get to the end of Days of Future Past, and it's a mind freak moment when you get the Mystique, eye flash. And then I found out after I had speculated like crazy, oh man, what is that going to be? Are we even going to have Weapon X? What is Mystique going to do with Wolverine? Is she just going to have a pet Wolverine now? What's going to happen? And then and then I hear an interview with Bryan Singer, or I hear or I watch commentary or something for one of the cuts, I forget which, and he says, yeah, we just put that in because we thought it needed kind of maybe more of a punchy ending, and it seemed like a cool callback to X1, so we went ahead and put that in there, and I'm like, that is a fine thing to do in post. Like when they shot that, the guy playing Stryker thought he was Stryker, not Mystique. But when you go back and watch X2, just the idea of Mystique pretending to be Stryker is immediately a provocative notion. Like what a cool way to soft reset this continuity, where like we take two characters where that have a history that don't have the same history here now, and we change all of that, and then they just don't even do it. Like when you go back and watch Days of Future Past now, and some people think that they'll address it later. There's no way they address it later. If they didn't do it here, they're not going to do it, I don't think. Like when you go back and watch Days of Future Past now, you just have to ignore the eye flash. You just have to pretend like it didn't happen and that's actually Stryker. It's insane.
It's also with like Mystique. Is Mystique Nightcrawler's mother? Because like here's the thing that's weird about that. Like, so that's just what Mystique's doing in her life at the time when she goes to save Nightcrawler. It's not, as far as we know, really a reason. Like, that's just what she does. She goes and she tries to help mutants, I guess. She finds this mutant, and you can theorize like, oh, she went to find Nightcrawler because she's his mother, and you can theorize like, was it Azazel? Was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We can theorize like, oh, like yeah, they might have had a relationship or something, but like we have not, but like we don't know, and like it's like, are we gonna address that later? Because it's like like why hint at that? Like why have Mystique go find Nightcrawler if not?
I feel like
it's like they've hinted at it before, but they refuse to confirm it.
I feel like if they haven't already touched on it with the perfect parallel of Quicksilver looking for his dad,
yeah,
they probably won't in the future. It just feels like too perfect and too like they could have made this movie all about like family and like look at these parents who've abandoned their children and blah 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 blah. But like they didn't do that, and I don't know. I don't see them coming up with a better reasoning for that after Quicksilver has already had his little arc.
Yeah, which is also another complaint I have, which I don't like the fact that he decides at the last minute, no, I'm not going to tell Magneto that he's my father. That comes out of nowhere.
Especially because it could potentially save the planet.
Right? Why wouldn't you just say, no, I'm your son, and then just let Magneto calm down? I don't understand that.
There are people that hate it when I say this. I don't care. Once again, that's so CW. That was the most television moment of this movie, was he's like, and I'm here for my family too, and I'm like, your arc has been leading up to you finally, like it makes him seem really uncourageous.
Yep.
Because he's been building up the gumption to deal with this, and then he's got the chance, and he doesn't deal with it, which he should do for himself, and he also should do it because Magneto is doing all this because he lost his family, and he lost his daughter, and he has a son, and you could be helping save the planet.
It works for so many reasons though, because like the thing that would make me buy Magneto changing right there is like, look, my son has faith in the X-Men, has faith in like this school, whatever, like he's with them, like, and a lot of things come back to like people having faith in their in other people in this movie, and it's like it makes so much sense to just have him do and like go far enough, like it could have gone there, and that wouldn't have been too much for this movie or anything like that.
Although we say that, Rasco, you also have to keep in mind that it's somewhat problematic that, okay, so yes, I have a son, and maybe I have reasons to like be a better person, but my son's a mutant, and it was humans that killed my other kid, and I'm still upset about that. So I still have reason to go after the humans. But
I mean, like, wouldn't you be more dumbfounded by the fact that your kid is standing there that you didn't even know existed?
No, you would. You would. It's at least a good distraction. You're right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that it's not so much that his daughter and wife were killed by humans, because we're not led to believe that his wife was a mutant. So, like, that... I feel like it's more that he feels like he's alone than it's that he... Obviously, he does blame humans for the fact that his daughter and wife are dead, but I think it's more that he feels like he's alone and he's being an emo teenager and nobody understands him, and he needs to go kill people to feel better because that's what emo teenagers do. And if Quicksilver had that moment, like, that would have been a really great moment to bring him back and be like, no, you're not alone, because Mystique says that too. She's like, no, like, you have me and you have Charles. And Quicksilver that would have been the perfect moment for him to be like, no, I'm your son. You're really, like, not just these, like, oh, you're my brother type of things that you have with some of the X-Men, but, like, actual familial bonds that could have sort of pulled him back from that.
Importantly, though, and I mean, I'm with you. I still say that might have solved it. But he's still angry with humanity over anything. Like because that's the only way that the apocalypse thing, and like first time around I didn't even pick up on this because I didn't think it was working and I wasn't invested enough. But like the only reason he really turns on Apocalypse is Apocalypse starts killing his own kind, right? Like it's like Apocalypse. It's like he didn't realize that Apocalypse wasn't saying all the mutants are strong enough to take over the humanity. He's saying, oh, just me. Oh, wait, I'm not on board with that. You can't kill our kind. So it does still have to be that. And it has to be tied back to how he felt about humanity versus mutants before. And again, it's still too much of a reset back to serial killer.
There's a really interesting like parallel between the kind of arcs that we get with Magneto and Mystique, that they're kind of similar in that Magneto has this thing where like his family, he goes through this horrible traumatic event again, and his family is taken from him again, and he even he looks and he's like, is this what you want from me? And he's like speaking to God, and it's like this thing where he feels like perhaps this is like his destiny, his future, like what he has to do, because it's like obviously like the universe is against me almost. And then this god-like mutant shows up and pretty much has this message that pretty much is like, yep, everything that you think you are meant to be, like you should be that. And with Mystique, you have this thing where she made this choice, and for this world that she doesn't have, like a message she doesn't even necessarily have faith in, like this whole thing that mutants and humans can coexist. And like there's that line where she's like, I don't want to be the face of this world that doesn't exist. Like this idea that she doesn't necessarily even believe in herself, but she's the face of that idea, that revolution or whatever. And so she kind of feels like she has to step into that role. And in the end, she kind of does when they have that conversation about her first mission with like and she's talking to like Jean and them. And so it's like a weird parallel that they both have, where it's like they have like a destiny or like a future that's like they don't necessarily even want, but it's like forced upon them almost.
Yeah, and the Mystique stuff I like better on like a second and third viewing with her not being blue, which is still only there because you're paying for Jennifer Lawrence. But whatever, you can kind of rope it into the character thing. My bigger issue as far as like aesthetically goes is I hate that Beast is not Beast. There's no reason by the end of Days of Future Past he should still just look like a human being for any reason, really. And it really hurts the metaphor of what Xavier is trying to stand for and what the mutant-humanity relationship is supposed to be. But before we get too far away from it, I do want to mention there's the Quicksilver super speed scene in this, and I don't like it. I'm probably the only person, but I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
That's a weird thing.
It's too retready. I mean, it's fun for a second, and then I realized that they're going too far with it.
I really liked it, but it was too long.
My big issue with it, ultimately, is just if you go back and watch the one in Days of Future Past, It's very innovative. It's very look at every individual beat and then look at every single individual reaction of that beat.
Yeah.
This is just him messing around for like 4 minutes.
And the problem,
it's cool to watch, but it doesn't look at it. It is more innovative, but it doesn't look as innovative as the first one did, and that's just.
And the stakes are too high.
Yeah. And plus, it's too convenient. Like, he just happens to show up the moment the explosion's about to go off, and instead of knocking on the door like a normal person, he's going to go straight down to a Cerebro, assuming he'd know where that is, and see the explosion? It's really convenient.
Yeah, I wasn't sure I bought it because, and again, I get it, it's fun, but the problem is, he would have to know the entire layout of that school to be sure he got everyone.
And music, and I like cool music, so that's probably not a valid reason. And it was cool looking. Okay.
It's fun, but we're talking about it took us out a little bit. Like all these kids are gonna die, and they're children, and they're all gonna die, and you're like screwing around and moonwalking and stuff. Like I get that. Look, I realize he was doing a lot of silly, fun things in that scene that they're aping from Days of Future Past. But he can see the whole room. He knows how much time he has, and he's able to plan it all.
Yeah, and if he misses someone, we'll there.
And yeah, we make him the exact same character, and we make a big deal out of how he's a loser and he's still in his parents' basement and all of that. By the way, or his mom's basement, importantly. And there are things about that I like, but I just thought of this. If you're living in your parents' basement or your mom's basement for 10 years, and you're able to experience time the way he experiences time,
I know.
You would turn into a crazy person.
I know. I've thought about that so much. It's like, oh my, it's like it has to be like a turn off, turn on thing in your brain.
It has to be. Yeah.
Also, I don't care how fast you can move. You can't force Pac-Man to go faster.
No, you can't. It's really weird.
That is as ridiculous as Scotty making a Mac Plus open 15 windows really super fast in Star Trek 4. I don't care that you come from the 23rd century. You can't force a Mac Plus to go faster, and it's the first time you've ever used a keyboard.
The thing about the Quicksilver scene is like that stems from like a larger issue that happens with like scenes in movies that are like just out of nowhere, huge memorable scenes, and like everyone always talks about it. The thing is, like people look at it, and I've seen so many reviewers when they get to this and they talk about the Quicksilver scene, and they treat it like it's a no-brainer. Like you did it last time and it was great. No, don't even think about it. You have to do it again. Everyone knows you have to do it again, and like it's not like, and it's not that like you can't do it again. It's just that it's not a no-brainer. Like, you have to think about this. You don't just go like, oh, yeah, we did it last time and people liked it. Do it again and people will like it again. It's not that simple. Like, you shouldn't think about it as if, like, well, of course they've got to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's his signature thing, and that's how he experiences time, and that's like, what he brings to the table. I would have been almost impressed, I'm saying this, having not seen it done, so take that with a grain of salt. Maybe this would be awful, but I could almost, I think I almost would be impressed if you like did a really short one, or like he runs into a place and he starts one, and then we like cut to a subplot, and then we come back to it, something like that.
I do see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying about it being like too reach ready. I think part of it is that I like the X-Men movies, but I'm not like a huge X-Men fan. I'm not like, I don't dislike them or anything. I really enjoy this movie. Days of Future Past is awesome. Like, I love First Class. But I can't see what you're saying, because as soon as you said like, oh, that scene that everybody thinks about, my brain immediately goes to the church scene from Kingsman, and I'm gonna die if they try and recreate something like that in the sequel. I will be so beyond pissed. Yeah. So I see where you're coming from, in that, like, as a huge fan of the series, it's sort of like, okay, here we go again. But for me, who has seen Days of Future Past, I think 2 or 3 times, I'm very much like, oh, cool. Like, I haven't seen this scene a million times before. Like, I haven't rewatched the movie because I love it so much. It's sort of new and fresh for me because I'm not as familiar with the movie beforehand. I don't know. I see how, like, I don't know. I feel like I know why it's different for me than it is for you guys.
Importantly, it's also not the only thing that does that. This movie is relying really heavily on nostalgia factor going all the way back. Days of Future Past did that also, but that was like a reunion tribute kind of movie. You can't do that again. Like Singer is is relying too much on his main beats, which gets really weird when you look at it as a trilogy, because First Class was like a fresh thing that still was like trying to be a prequel and set up stuff that Singer did, so it still felt like it was sort of part of that world, but it was also, I mean, a lot of people, when that came out, it's funny the world we live in now, a lot of people when that came out swore up and down that it was a straight-up reboot and that it didn't have anything to do with the continuity. And we know where we are now. But, like, look at these three together as a trilogy, and it gets weird because now we have two movies that are going back to the well of X2 again. And I love X2, don't get me wrong, but we can't just keep worshiping at the idol of X2. We got to move forward at some point. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. Now, look, I'm not begrudging the theme because I love the theme, and I think that it just is stellar. It should be the X-Men theme. They should use it forevermore. It's Superman good. I mean, like that's great. They should keep using that. I'm not begrudging them that. They also should forever have the Fox logo. Da-da-da-da. Like, I love that we're still doing that. But I don't know, like Alkali Lake again and Stryker, and I mean, I took up for how it fits in the movie to some degree, but it's still kind of going back all the. I really wanted Stryker. I really wanted, when Wolverine runs off into the snow, I really wanted Stryker to break into the room and go, "There are no answers that way, Wolverine!"
Speaking of Stryker, did anybody else's theater just like gasp like when right before Mystique was like, no? Because everyone in my theater was like, when they saw Stryker, and I was like, this isn't like that big of a
Why are we that surprised by that? Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't even know who that is. Like, they're just like...
Exactly. And I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, okay, well, that's bizarre. How could people be surprised to see him enough to gasp, but be, like, naive enough about what they're watching and also know who that is?
Yeah, well, there was a girl sitting next to me and Gabe who, like, repeated every single line. Like, every time somebody would say something, she would be like, oh, yeah, and they would, like, say it out loud, and we kept being like,
oh my God,
what's happening with this person over here?
That's the worst.
She was, like, 12, but I was like, and she gasped really loud. But there were more people, like, behind me that gasped as well.
And I mean, I could maybe see it if, like, Stryker was played by a really great actor, but as far as X-Men goes with recasting, they're all genius recasts except Stryker. The guy that plays Stryker in the reboot alternate continuity movies is not very good. He's kind of bland.
He's okay, but they haven't given him anything to do yet. And also keep in mind that the Stryker we saw in X2, Steve, is a guy with a lot of history, and he's an older person, and he's he's got a lot of emotional weight under him, and he's also kind of a crazy person. So I mean, like, or at least a really extreme person. So they intentionally have recast Stryker to be a really straight-laced looking guy. But having said that, he also has this like secret place where he's experimenting on mutants, so he's got to be somewhat unhinged.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that character stuff, I think, for a lot of times can be independent of acting. Like, a good actor can make a nothing role memorable, and I don't think this guy who plays Stryker, I mean, I barely recognize him sometimes. Like, he's just a really bland-looking guy for someone that's in charge of something like Weapon X.
Hey, Rascal, talk about the Mohawk thing.
This movie is declaring a new trend in hairstyle where it's going, everyone has like shaved heads on the side. So like
now that is an 80s thing, but everyone in that, yeah.
Storm has like an awesome mohawk. And then Angel has like this weird kind of mohawk thing, but it's shaved like all the way around. And then Stryker has the same haircut to the point where when he's wearing a hat, it looks like he's got a shaved head, and then he takes off his hat, and he's actually got like a weird like mohawk shape thing on top of his head. And it's just, and then Xavier almost could have had a mohawk, but all of his hair came off, so he's just bald. But
so let's talk about hair some more. This is all going to be taste issue stuff to some degree, I'm sure, for different people. I was kind of fine with Storm's white coming from Apocalypse, but I did not need an origin for Xavier losing his hair. That's really Smallville. Like, I didn't need that. Having said that, we knew from previews that he was going to be bald, and I don't know how a guy like that at the beginning of a movie has lots of hair and then suddenly is bald, and it not come from that. So I expected some kind of silly origin for it, but I didn't.
There was a rumor after the first trailer came out, and you see that scene where Xavier's like, "I've never felt power like this before." There was a forum I was on where people were speculating. With like some rumors and stuff, that the reason Xavier loses his hair is that when he gets inside Apocalypse's head, he gets driven so mad temporarily that he rips his own hair out. Like he just goes nuts. And that would have been really cool to see. But it may have
what that would have set up, and this is why I keep saying that I'd like to see dealing with, because this is how you move the character forward. That I want to deal more with Xavier's moral ambiguity. Now we kind of got him at the end of this movie where he's had kind of where he's kind of gotten over some of that, at least with Moira. So maybe he wouldn't have that as much. But like early previews, Steve, I thought something similar. With the I've never felt power like this, and I knew it could go either way. I knew it could be he's either feeling Apocalypse's power or he's gaining power. One of those two things. I thought we might be setting up Onslaught. And those two things could have gone together really well. He rips his hair out, and then Apocalypse turns him into Onslaught. And maybe even like he doesn't even take as much of a push as it ought to, so that we can actually make it an interesting character thing, and he doesn't just turn into some other character, and then we go, he wasn't responsible for anything he did, because you wouldn't want it to be like that. But like, I don't know, this would have been the perfect way to do Onslaught, and it would have been a cool way, like if you were going to do Apocalypse just in one picture, it would have been a cool way to jump us into the next thing. And if McAvoy, and I think he's coming back, but also just saying, if McAvoy hadn't come back, it would be a way to keep him around, because you could have somebody else play Onslaught. But because Onslaught looks totally different than Professor Xavier. It would probably have to be a CG character. William Parcell asks if Apocalypse should have been a long-term endgame villain like Thanos, and I don't know if endgame villain, but I would have liked him to have not been taken out so easily.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing with Jean just being able to stop him I didn't like at all. It just felt too easy. And if he was a big endgame villain, maybe we could have delved more into him as being like a mutant god kind of thing. Because by the end, when one mutant just like burns him alive at the end, he doesn't feel like this big intimidating guy when he gives those grand speeches anymore. It just makes him feel like a loser.
It was also strange to put Magneto in a place where he basically has the same role as the Phoenix in X3.
Yeah. He's also way too powerful.
Where he's
the
just
acknowledge there's metal in the ground, there's way too much he can do.
But I think the point is that Apocalypse amplifies your power.
And how do you
he doesn't amplify his, he just tells him to tap into the Earth.
Well, we don't know. He could be amplifying it and not telling us, because there's some of that seems to maybe be happening.
Because he has the thing
what you're saying. That's what it looks like.
He grabs Magneto's hand, and he's like holding his hand, and like, I don't know, he amplifies everybody else. Like he does it with Storm, and he does it with Xavier, so I can just go with
That's fair, but then if Storm keeps the power next movie, then Magneto is suppressing too much. It's just weird to give a guy that's already got ambiguous powers with magnetism to make him just able to blow everything apart because everything's partially metal. Like, that's just a little too far, just like Quicksilver being too fast.
Well, and it's also weird that he wouldn't have already figured out that he could do that.
Yeah, especially after the thing in First Class where, like, Xavier helps him unlock his power already. Like, he already
has only been using his power for 15 years, and the version in the other continuity couldn't do that. Also, Magneto breaks bridges in both third movies. Nathan Snyder says, "Oh God, that Star Wars joke made me groan. Hey, let's mock The Last Stand despite the fact that our film is the third film in a prequel trilogy."
Well, I mean, that is the point of it. Like, it's not like they didn't realize that they were the third movie in the film. You know, like, the reason that they said that was to be like, oh, we're so aware of it. I'm not saying it worked, but...
I think they were also trying to make the case that this win is, like... I think that was Snyder saying that, yeah, don't expect too much from this third movie. I'm not trying to make it better than the last two. But it doesn't work for me just because, again, tone-deaf movie. I don't think it understands how serious and not serious it is scene to scene.
But not only that, but there is a double entendre there, as Nathan is suggesting, that, yeah, I'm with you. I think he is saying maybe our movie won't be as good as the last one, and we've been worried about that, so we put that line in. But we know that he wasn't happy with what Brett Ratner did with Last Stand either. So when he says third, because the other thing you have to keep in mind is he's okay. So now I'm talking far too deeply about this, but in the context of that, they're talking about the original Star Wars trilogy. And we are in a prequel trilogy saying that line. It sounds to people that know the X-Men movies more like they're making fun of the third in the original trilogy, not this one. You see what I'm saying?
Right, then the nitpick would be, in 1983, would there really be a pattern of bad third movies? Well, we don't have we don't have Alien 3 yet. We don't have a lot of the classic bad third movies. So, like, the joke is weird.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Alien 3.
Kecker's boy, Captain Logan, what are your thoughts? I guess this person doesn't care about you guys. What are your thoughts on Xavier and everyone forgiving Magneto even though he kills millions in this movie? Yes, thank you for keeping me focused and getting us back on track. Hate it. Cannot believe we went there. Once again, we do not want the same things. Yeah, you can't invite him back into your house after you've read his mind, and we did exactly the same thing we did with First Class, where he's like, oh, I'm so sorry about this horrible traumatic thing that happened to you. I feel your pain. His next line should have been, but don't know if I can work with a person that goes around and slaughters a dozen people at once. Yeah, that's really problem. And again, like it's not just that he killed people; it's that Magneto's not going to be there for the same interests, and they weren't on the same page in Days of Future Past until they had to work together to solve a problem. And you could make the argument that that part of the point of Days of Future Past was they're finding common ground again, which they had to do in order to fix the future and solve that problem. But we hadn't regressed him back to, like, remember, he saved JFK and he hadn't been killing humans, and like he had maybe turned over a new leaf. Like, we've regressed him again, and so at the very, very least, you can't do that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird for Xavier to give that line, but then it again goes back to just Magneto being in this movie is really contrived. The classic thing with X-Men, part of why I've read a lot of X-Men despite not being an X-Men fan, but part of my problem with X-Men histories in general is it's a book designed to get to the point where Xavier and Eric are no longer there, and the next generation is supposed to take over. It's very intentionally built around that, and we keep forcing those two to the center, and we keep forcing this sort of détente between Eric and Charles, and every time we see it, it gets more and more contrived, but then just as a viewer, I'm sick of seeing this like 7 times.
Spider-Man Sidekick 1 says they turned him over to the police in X1 for doing less.
That's a good point.
I mean, like, does Xavier not believe in justice if your name is Magneto? I don't understand that. Like, he thinks that we should have peaceful cohabitation between humans and mutants, but if you're on his side for that goal, maybe it's okay that you killed people in the name of the opposite of that? Anyway, it doesn't work. Anybody else want to weigh in on that before we move on? Because I'm just going to spin my wheels. I was so upset about that.
Yeah, that doesn't... Yeah.
Carl Maxey, Captain Logan, talk about Jubilee. Well...
She's a glorified extra in this movie. She doesn't do anything.
That's what she was when she was the exact same age and looked kind of just like this in the 90s.
Well, she's been in 4 movies.
Yeah. It's hilarious. We've de-aged her and we've de-aged her and, well, and like, Lo, you say glorified extra, but she got 100 times more lines than she's had in the other appearances she's been in. Yeah, here's the thing. Once again, setup thing. Maybe next movie we'll actually give her things to do, but we didn't put her in an outfit. So, outlook not so good.
Yeah, that's really weird.
I imagine we're gonna get something like the Rogue cut here with the Jubilee cut because you said there is the mall stuff. The Jubilee cut, so maybe.
I will make this complaint. One of my couple of really silly nitpicks. You can't have a line about going to the mall with Jubilee. And first of all, Jubilee should have been jumping up and down, freaking out about how much she likes the mall. I couldn't believe how laid back and nonchalant. What, you know what the mall is? No, she should be like, dude, mall now. Like, that's Jubilee. And I'm not even a big fan of that character, but like, if we're gonna have her in there, let's at least have some fun with her, right?
Why didn't they give that to Cyclops of all people? Like, Cyclops is like, it's a national tragedy that Nightcrawler hasn't been to a mall. That's a Jubilee line.
If you give Jubilee that line, she immediately stops becoming a glorified extra. Like now she has personality. Like with just that one line, it would have been great. But yeah, you can't have a movie where she goes to the mall and not have a line about chili dogs. That's crazy. You can't do that. That was a big mistake. Something else, and I said this to Rasco the other day, but I didn't talk about it on how we felt about it because it was a spoiler. And now we're doing the spoiler thing, so I can talk about it. Steve, tell me if you had this. Again, tiny nitpick, but we've got Nightcrawler, and pretty much everything that he was in X2 lines up. The age thing might even be fine. Like he's pretty much the exact same character, lines up okay. I wish he had the tattoo thing, but maybe he developed that later. I don't know. But anyway, so he's doing he's thrown into the underground mutant fight thing. Which, can I say, I've seen that so many bazillions of times that, like, it's such a cliche, I just don't even want to ever see that ever again, unless I see something really interesting done with that. Birds of Prey had 13 episodes, and it had that episode. Could we not do that? But I get it. You need an example of people doing bad things to mutants, and Mystique going around trying to help them, so whatever. Anyway, so we introduce Nightcrawler, and the guy that introduces him calls him amazing, and calls him something else, but not incredible. And in X2, he introduces himself as, from the Munich Circus, the Incredible Nightcrawler. How do we have two other intro words and we never say incredible? That's my complaint about that.
That's a joke. And he's supposed to get out there and be like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. You got it wrong! I'm the Incredible Nightcrawler.
They should have done that!
Especially because the announcer says he's from the circus, so wouldn't he just use his circus tagline?
Rasco, if that was Bryan Singer intentionally messing with people, that is the nerdiest thing ever. That he would expect anyone to even remember that. And that's why I'm saying it's a giant nitpick. It's like, I bet most people don't even remember that. But, like, I was sitting in the theater, he says amazing. I'm like, the next thing he's going to say is incredible. What? And then I wanted Bonesaw to pop out. Bonesaw is ready. There are things about that scene that I like a lot, though. I think it's kind of fun when Angel's like, okay, you got to fight me, and then he loses part of his wing, and he's pissed. So some of that was fun.
I also like that they had the Metallica song playing in his lair, Four Horsemen. Like he just looks like the kind of guy that would have that.
Yeah, that's convenient.
It's convenient. It's dumb, but it sounds nice in the scene. I mean, it's just part of the movie being tone deaf, right? Like it's part of we have this right before we see two humans gruesomely murdered, and Magneto give a speech about murder and then undercut it again. Like it's just a really weirdly edited movie.
See, I get conflicted about stuff like this because the Angel thing is really only a problem if either you're a fan of that character and you really want to see cool things done with him and you want him to get a character arc because he is just there to be one of the Horsemen, or if you saw him in X3 and now he's there again, you're like, wouldn't you do something more with him? He had a character arc in X3 and people complained about how little he got to do in that movie, and here got killed. So I get conflicted about this kind of thing because, and I'm thinking about this because of something Lo said earlier. If you don't know this stuff, that's not really a problem. And yet, like Rasco and I were talking about the other day when we did How We Felt About, I don't know that you can really go in and appreciate an X-Men movie without knowing a lot of the history, or even be able to like navigate it without knowing what lines up and what doesn't. It's so convoluted now. And I hate saying that because I thought we kind of fixed some of that with the last movie, and now it looks like we might be moving right back into the direction of just whatever, just throw stuff in there.
I don't think I've seen the original X-Men movies since before First Class came out, and I tracked just fine. Like I don't think it's as even if some of the backstory stuff is convoluted, and like if you know stuff about the characters, you're like, this doesn't make sense for this character or what have you. I mean, like, I tracked just fine and was able to follow the plot and wasn't confused or like feeling like I missed stuff or didn't get why characters were doing things. That's it.
All I meant was that you can't walk into this movie and have never seen any of them. That's all I'm saying.
True.
Yeah, that is definitely true.
That is definitely true.
Only point I'm making with that. And you couldn't have walked into Days of Future Past and that be your first thing, because that's like I said, it's a family reunion movie. Like, that's what that is. But having said, but on the other hand, I don't know. I'll slightly argue with you, Lo, and just say that they're like, okay, you might attract just fine. You have seen them, so like you've at least seen them at some point in your life. There is too much stuff in that movie that is. And I'm not even saying that this is a problem. I'm just saying that it's interesting that this is a franchise that is that you're kind of expected to have seen everything, or at least or at least everything that's called X-Men and doesn't have origins in the title. I just say that because we're not really referencing that movie or doing anything with it, but like there's a lot of retroactive stuff where the Jean and Cyclops stuff, probably you'll understand it just fine, but like there are things to do that you wouldn't even remotely appreciate if you hadn't seen that stuff, and I don't just mean like, and I don't mean like layered things. I mean the Wolverine thing where she reads his mind makes no sense if you haven't seen the original X-Men movies. You would not know what was going on.
That scene honestly made me really uncomfortable because of what I know from the like original X-Men. I was just like, this is so weird, and like I get that it's fine because like he doesn't age and we'll get there eventually, but I was like, this is so weird that he had like met her as like a young teen and then he's like trying to romantically pursue her in the future. It weirded me out.
So
that's fair.
Romantic relationships with older men.
That scene really bugged me. I don't think the unlocking his past thing makes any sense at all. If it was something that didn't have to do with her, and I was positive that's what it was, okay. But the Logan line that sounds suspiciously like Femke Janssen's line, or like Femke Janssen's voice. Maybe it's not supposed to be. I saw it twice. It sure sounded like that's what it was. And she says, I unlocked a part of his past. Does she not know what she's unlocking? Is she not like? How does she not have this big like surprise face where she's like, oh holy crap! At some point, like this person met me in the future and came back into, and then disregarding all of that. It doesn't make sense that any of those memories would be in his head because the version of him that was in his head left, and unless there were residuals left behind, we didn't get any sense of that. But maybe that's what it was. But I mean, like, I don't know. That's really if you spend anything thinking about it, that entire thing completely falls apart.
It makes you feel worse for Wolverine, though, if you think about it, because he just got his body imposed on by a future Wolverine through Days of Future Past, then just gets knocked out and is trapped for 10 years as Weapon X. Like, he just had the worst string of luck after he woke up in that bed in the beginning of Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
I think I want to change my mind about my worst thing and say that it was actually everything that had to do with Logan. Because
it's bad.
That whole sequence, like, you could have done so much more with the three characters that were there and have them take out all of Stryker and his gang in a less bloody way and not have this scene that, even though I get it's setting up stuff for another movie, like, it had nothing to do with anything that was happening in the movie. It just was so that we could have that shot in the trailer with his claws coming out.
It's really
the main reason it was there was so that we could finally get the real Weapon X, which is kind of just a matter of costume. And yeah, it's cool, it looks good, and I'm glad we finally got to see it, but the more we're talking about it, I mean, entire sequence is contrived just to get us there.
If you're gonna do the real Weapon X, like, do it and have a movie that is like have that be part of the movie, because like I still don't feel like people are getting what they want out of that because we see it for 2 seconds and then he's gone and free.
You are damned if you do and damned if you don't with that.
Yeah, I know.
Because if you I'm just saying, if you make too much of that movie then people will say, oh, it's all Wolverine. A lot of people were upset that he was even going to be in this at all as a cameo or anything. And then you're basically remaking another movie at that point. Like, you're just doing origins better.
Everybody's ignoring that movie anyway.
No, I know, but it seems like maybe a waste of time to go back and actually do an entire movie that's that again. Like, we know what happens with Weapon X, and as much as I love Weapon X, I don't know that it's a feature film. And you saw what they attempted to do in trying to pull it out and make it a feature film. It's like trying to take. You could, if the focus isn't on Hugh Jackman the whole movie, like if you're focusing on mad scientists and stuff, but that's not what would happen, and that's not what happened with Origins. It's like it was exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing that happens when you try to take How the Grinch Stole Christmas and make that an entire movie. It's the same problem.
That movie is great.
Okay, well.
I am sad, though, that we retconned the Wolverine almost immediately, because I really like that movie. And it's a shame, because Wolverine's going to have a trilogy now, and parts of it are gone.
Continuity. And the last one probably also will barely be in continuity.
It will. And, I mean, I don't care because Origins, but I care because I like the Wolverine. It's my second favorite X-Men movie.
It's actually pretty darn good. It's pretty solid. But yeah, well, the problem with making Weapon X an entire movie is that X2 is really great with leaving a lot of that stuff as a mystery. And when you get to the end of the movie, I don't feel like I want to know anymore. I like how much it's still left mysterious.
I wasn't saying that we need to do it as its own movie. I'm just saying that it's really dumb that they had one sequence where we find out absolutely nothing. It's just, here we go. This is what you guys wanted. Okay, now he's gone. When it could have been not even necessarily the main point of the movie. Like, I don't think it would have worked in this movie with Apocalypse because that's kind of a huge plot. But it could have worked in conjunction with some other plot, and it still wouldn't have been just a Wolverine movie. And you could have done it way better than that. I would have preferred that they did it in a different movie or left it until or expanded it in this. Although I don't think it would have worked with Apocalypse. But yeah, I don't think it would have worked as its own movie. But it was dumb that it was just one little sequence where he just really, really looked like a Wolverine. His hair was just everywhere. But,
yeah, and it looks exactly like in the book. I mean, that's awesome. But yeah, I'm with you. Who is it that shows up? I'm forgetting which character shows up and picks them up from Weapon X. Do you guys remember? Somebody shows up and picks them up. Is it Beast?
They fly out because they have a plane, and Beast flies the plane.
Or is it? Oh, okay. Maybe it's Mystique. Somebody walks into the hallway and looks around and says, "You've been busy." Was it Mystique? I can't remember. And I could not believe that line because I was like, "How are you not looking at all this blood and going, you children did all this?" Because then Cyclops to somebody is like, there's a lot of characters that I've only seen this twice. Well, we had help, and you're like, oh, okay, but how is she not like? How is she not like, holy crap, look at all the blood! You kids murdered all these people?
It is perfectly consistent with letting mass murderer Eric Ledger go at the end, though.
Oh, no, absolutely it is. Yeah.
They're just that morally desensitized.
I would have liked the scene where Mystique berates Professor Xavier for letting Eric go, and is like, no, we need him on our team! He can kill people! It's helpful! Oscar Toledo, Captain, being a great fan of X2, what do you think about their putting the lines between Magneto and Xavier from X2 at the end of this movie? Okay, here's what I'm trying to remember. Was it the end of X2 or was it the end of X1? It's the end of X1, is it not?
I thought it was X2. I'm not sure.
I keep saying that. And I thought, because, well, keep in mind that X2, that happens. Like that's when Stryker shows up and actually goes to that school. I'm pretty sure that's the end of X1, and that's how they were following that line up. Yeah, when they put that in the trailer, I was like, okay, we're kind of doing the Star Trek Into Darkness thing, right? Where like you take a sequence from another movie that was really popular and people like a lot, and then you put it into the mouths of an earlier version of them, and you make the dialogue exactly the same. At least here it was the same character saying it in a context that almost worked. It was fun getting to see those actors say those lines, but I didn't like that we did it.
The thing that bugs me, though, is I think they did that same trope, but much better earlier in the movie, because in X2, Magneto's reading Once and Future King, and the book that Xavier's reading from when we meet him in this movie is Once and Future King.
Okay, that's cool. Like, that's fine.
Like,
yeah, but that's not like
that. I don't know why you need to any more than that.
See, it felt like a pretty contrived placement, because the thing that you're saying, I would pity anyone that came to this school. It happened in this movie. Like, the thing you're talking about just happened to you. Like, it's just it's not an exchange that really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And especially to be word for word. And especially because Xavier, in the context of when he says it in the other X-Men movie, is threatening Magneto. He's like, "Don't ever do that." Like, it's a weird context. Anyway, Mass Sci-Fi fan, do you think Fox could have been planning on having Galactus be the final villain, hence why Apocalypse was used so early? No, I don't. I don't think Fox is ever going to use Galactus in a cool way, much less in an X-Men movie.
That's just give back Galactus.
William Parcell, were you disappointed they never dealt with Nightcrawler's faith when the villain was basically a false prophet? Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, they have the token prayers and stuff, but that was a big thing that Shades and I were talking about when we were speculating about this movie. I think it was, or was it me and Eric? I forget. But we talked about that. We're like, oh, that's really cool. You put there's just so many missed opportunities like that.
Yeah, especially considering, like, not only is Nightcrawler religious, but so is Magneto. He's Jewish. He's got a very interesting connection to Jewish mythology and history, and we never do any of that.
Okay, Oscar Toledo. Captain, you mentioned that Deadpool referenced this movie in that movie. What was that reference? Okay, you ready for this? Have you guys thought of this? Deadpool has that where he's making fun of how the X Mansion is constantly getting blown up, and a lot of people were like, "Well, that's cool if you know." We even brought it up in our Spoilercast. That's funny if you know comics, but it hasn't really happened in the movies, and then it happens in this movie. If that's not a direct Deadpool, if that's not Deadpool knowing what was in this movie and referencing it, or maybe going the other way, I'll be real surprised. That was and could be a really fantastic coincidence. But let's answer some more questions if you guys are game.
Sure.
Okay. This is from.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rasco. I'm also grabbing questions.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm doing Rasco's job because Rasco's talking a lot and has a lot of interesting things to say. So I don't want him to feel like he can't also talk about things. Go ahead.
The Ponderer. Crap. The question just disappeared. Oh no.
Is it the one that says "for the panel" in big bold letters? I got that one.
It might have been.
He said, on a similar note to the religion, was anyone else disappointed that this movie didn't really play around with the decade like First Class in Days of Future Past? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I thought of that too.
They did a really generic glossing over thing of like, oh, Russia and America are superpowers, and Apocalypse is like, no more superpowers. But there's no interesting connection between those two. It's just an offhanded line.
There's a few cool pop culture references and things in the background that aren't the obvious things you always go to, which I really appreciate, and these have always done a really good job with that. We talked about one or two of those earlier. I mean, Batman's an obvious thing, but like, but the Metallica thing was cool. Like, Four Horsemen, it's kind of obvious, but if you don't know that song, you don't know that's what's playing. And then at the same time, I often praise music when it is on the nose like that, when it's like a really interesting comparison. So like, I don't know, that's just it's called Four Horsemen, and we have that in this movie. So maybe I shouldn't praise it real hard, but I don't know, I like Metallica, and that's not a song people usually use in movies. And then also Duran Duran in a different language at the beginning. That was pretty cool. Other questions, or if you guys want to talk about the '80s thing.
Oh.
I agree. There wasn't a ton.
It's a thing where, like, I don't have to. I mean, it doesn't have to. Like, that's kind of the weird thing about this is like, we made it a period piece to kind of, like, because it was an interesting idea, and it's like you kind of like if you don't continue on utilizing the time period, people are going to call you out, but I can see them not feeling like they have to.
I mean, Jubilee's outfit just fits right in with the 80s, so that was 80s enough for me.
I would not be the person to do this, but so I'm responding to Nate Carter leaves this comment. I can't wait to see some good old Mr. Sinister. I would not be the person to do this, but I want to see some like giant comic expert that is way nerdier than me walk into a movie like this knowing there will be an after credit scene and bringing a sign with them that says lecture following the movie. And then when the film is over, put that sign up and see if anybody stays, and then bring like a wireless microphone with you and be like, okay, everybody that doesn't know the comics, this is what that meant. The first viewing I had of this movie, I had people all around me whispering to what, and like I figured out how many people were like a geek that brought his girlfriend, or like a kid with his parents or his grandparents, because I heard all these people standing up as they were leaving, whispering to the person, "Hey, who the hell is Essex? What is that?"
Yeah.
That is kind of funny that this is the thing people have been asking for years, and then we get it, and no one knows what it means.
Nobody knows what it means. Yeah, that's not what I would have done. And again, like, it's cool if you know your stuff, but it's a little elitist, right?
I mean, just considering, we mentioned this before, but just like the idea of these movies being so in their own continuity now that maybe it's more okay for them. Because at this point, the X-Men movies are so convoluted that you need not only movie knowledge, but you need a little bit of comic book knowledge to make sure you understand some of the more vague areas of these things. And that's a problem, and it's not at the same time.
You also have to know the reactions of the audiences to every X-Men movie to fully appreciate some of the things. Like at the end of Days of Future Past, when you see Scott, unless you know how stupid it was for Cyclops to die off screen in X3, that's not as big as a reveal. Like, I lost it when I saw Scott. I was like, that is ridiculous. That is so great.
Yeah, that whole final scene only plays if you've seen
X3.
X3.
Awesome.
Well, and of course, when you see which doesn't end up lining up real well, when you see the after credit scene at the end of the Wolverine, and Professor X is in an airport, like anybody that knows the movies has got to immediately be, wait a minute, his body is gone. Well, how does that work? So like, yeah, it's hilarious. And I mean, I guess it's okay that after credit scenes would be kind of for the fans of the franchise you're watching. That makes sense. But like to have to know the comics, like it took me a minute. I was like, Essex, oh yeah, that's right, I know who that is. Like it took me a minute.
So,
Joel Davis, do you guys think once we finish Old Man Logan, do we finally reboot the X-Men franchise completely and start from scratch? No, there's no.
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 I doubt it's going to happen at this point. If you didn't reboot with First Class, you're not going to.
I think that maybe what they do is they do maybe like 2 more movies in this X continuity. Like I think they get to like the 2000s maybe. And I think they go on with New Mutants. Like I think that they're gonna like bank on that franchise because I assume that that's gonna be in the Deadpool time period. I would assume. I don't know, but that's gotta be. I mean, like at some point we have to establish when the Deadpool franchise is taking place. I guess.
Can I suggest something that I think makes sense, but will equally irritate people if they did it? X-Men is such a, I mean, for comics, certainly a lot of 70s and 80s throwback, but X-Men is, for general public, such a 90s throwback thing. And your first movie was in the 90s, and you wouldn't have had that if it weren't for that cartoon show. I think they could get away with it, and it would almost be smart to stop jumping several years ahead and do a trilogy in the 90s. Just leave it there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just stop skipping ahead. Just keep.
A lot of people will complain that you're just continuing to bank too much on nostalgia. I'm constantly hearing people venomous about the fact that we're still stuck in the 90s and all we care about is 90s stuff. But these have been period pieces for a while, and if we weren't going to go ahead and finally jump it to present day now, we cast these young kids as these characters. They should get to play them for a while. You got to keep it in the 90s for them to do that. Unless you do some silly, like, Bendis thing where you take them from the 90s and you time travel them to present. It'd be the only thing you could do. I don't mean it was silly when Bendis did it. I just mean that in this case, that would be really silly.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's weird that we're going to... I don't like that we're already jumping ahead to 90s with the next movie. I hope they change their mind about that and just keep it in the 80s.
I mean, I'm excited about it because I want to see what they do with that time period. And I think Sinister is potentially more fun in the 90s than he is in the 80s.
The problem for me, though, is just...
I don't know why I'm saying that.
My problem for me, though, is just, like, I can suspend disbelief enough for Fassbender and McAvoy that they are 20 years older than they are in First Class. I can't do that with this new X-Men. They don't look like they're going to be 10 years old in the next movie. You can't make me buy that.
They cast him like Marvel cast Spider-Man.
Exactly. You have to go immediately following. You can't make me think that this kid who's probably 15 or 17 is going to be 27 next movie.
Yeah, it was already a hard enough pill to swallow with Quicksilver, I thought.
Yeah, it was. I didn't buy that at all, but I gave it to it because, I mean, I want to be somewhat charitable to the movie.
Matt from Who Reviews the Reviewers, hi Matt, wants to know, or says he hopes Gambit's in the next movie. Gambit's still supposed to get a movie.
That keeps falling through, though, so we'll see what happens.
Is that still not actually in pre-production even?
It's in production. They've come out and said that, well, now we're focusing on trying to get the script right. And they keep, like, losing directors and stuff, and I want a Gambit movie. Channing Tatum as Gambit is not something I cared about when it was announced, but now I really like that actor, so I want to see that. But especially with Sinister. But I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. Especially if this movie doesn't perform as well.
Nathan Snyder, can we add Colossus from Deadpool into the X-Men films? I want that version. Yeah, and I mean, I think that you could easily, in the 90s, put him in there. Yeah. And say that he's been around for a while, because there's no sense of what age he is in Deadpool. And also, as we said when we did the Deadpool spoiler cast, so much of that is from Deadpool's perspective and unreliable narrators, so you can do anything you want to, potentially. Although we'll see what that franchise is like moving forward, and how much stuff we're actually supposed to like think is really happening, and how much of it is him just telling us a crazy story. But yeah, Lo, I feel like we have shafted you like Cyclops got shafted in every other X-Men movie.
You guys always say that. It's just because I don't usually have as much to say as you guys do, and I interject my opinions. I get out there. Don't worry.
Okay, I'm just making sure because I don't want you to feel like Cyclops. I don't want anyone to ever feel like Cyclops.
It's all good.
We don't want to make a movie where the sole purpose of it is to have a final scene where you show up and to let us know that you are alive. That's just be too much trouble.
Now, can I say, though, that we did kind of the same thing with X2 where we found ways to, like, write characters out so that they wouldn't be in certain places, but I think we did it a little bit better here. Like Professor X is still, like, despite how I feel about his character arc and where he's at the end, like he gets taken out of the action, but he's part of the villain's main plan, and he gets the big showdown with him inside of his head. Which, by the way, there's some cool effects in that and stuff. Like I liked the house sprouting up behind him and stuff. Like that was all kind of neat. I think a lot of people were likely disappointed because we saw Giant Apocalypse in the trailers, and then he wasn't actually giant in real life, inside the narrative. But
can I, speaking of things that were in the trailer that were different, okay, this is something that always really bothers me in movies, when they have a line said a certain way in a trailer and then don't say it that way, like they use a different take in the movie. Yeah. When Jean says, "I saw the end of the world, I felt all this death," it's like completely different. It's said at a completely different, like, pace and like urgency, and it's a really stupid thing, and if I hadn't seen the trailer I wouldn't care, but it took me out of the movie. I was like, I've heard this line said so many times and it's not the same now, and it bothered me. It's a stupid thing to bother me, but it did.
Not at all. I had that too.
I was watching like the trailers of Days of Future Past, and like so many shots from like the early trailers for that movie are not in the movie. They're in like the road cut. Like, one of the first trailers is almost like 0% shots from the actual movie.
We have... Lo, I love that you brought that up. I think there's... I think we could do an entire GNN on stuff left out from trailers. I've seen it handled to really good effect, and Civil War is a great example, where they intentionally use a different take so that when you get to it in the movie and the line is said, it doesn't feel like you've been there before, and it's in a totally different context. They've got that thing in the trailer with Civil War where Tony keeps saying, I want to knock your teeth out, and when you get to it in the movie, it's a different line delivery, and I noticed that it was a different delivery, but it's sort of the scene, and I was like, oh, that's the kind, like sometimes they would do it so that, and I've seen it in other things where it can still be a surprise and the context is totally different. In this, they were using bad takes. Yeah, like they were using better takes in the trailer than they were using in the movie, and that gets problematic. It's like that thing in the Indiana Jones 4 in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where part-time. He has that line where he says that line like really strangely, but then in the trailer it's a normal line delivery, and then you get into the movie and he's like, are you still a teen? Part-time. Part-time. Okay, William Purcell, do you think Singer and company should have taken a break for a while before making another X-Men movie? Yeah, I do. I mean, I made that point earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of wishing we just kind of let Singer go. I mean, I like Days of Future Past well enough, but I don't think he's a very good director. He gets lucky here and there, like Usual Suspects and X2 and Days of Future Past, but the guy seems to have this problem of not being able to make things cinematic enough. Like, his movies watch really well on TV. He's really good about, like, talky scenes and stuff, but as far as like CGI integration goes, action integration goes, advancing as technology advances, I feel like we've kind of left his style in the dust.
That's fair. It's not a thing I have ever thought about until this one, but I chalked it up to Rush Job.
I don't know about that, because I mean, I've seen a lot of Singer movies that look like this. Like Valkyrie looks like this.
Well,
Superman Returns looks like this.
Yeah, but this is better than Superman Returns.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of, like, because Superman Returns was his passion project. He did what he wanted to do with that movie. He did what he wanted to do in this movie, and it just doesn't look good. The other thing I want to mention before we get away from the movie and context and such is that as far as 2016 goes, and as far as X-Men goes, between Days of Future Past and then with Civil War and Deadpool, Doctor Strange, Suicide Squad, Batman vs. Superman, this is the least risky comic book movie we've had in a long time. There's really no reason it shouldn't have been more competent.
What do you mean by risky? You mean like Days of Future Past was really popular?
The idea of retconning things and having the two timelines is a risk. Like putting the X3 stuff back, and that's a risk. Civil War is a risk. Batman vs. Superman is a risk. This is not. This is just another X-Men story. It really shouldn't have felt as bland as it did.
Which is really strange because tonally, it sure is acting like it's a big event.
Yeah.
Like it wants you to think that, and then I get to the end. Somebody, and I don't know if this is true, but somebody left a comment earlier that they thought that like the body count was higher in this than in like any superhero movie they've seen, and like I never really get the feeling that anything is at stake really, and we got rid of all nuclear weapons, and we like I don't know what it is. It is some of like there's some pretty shoddy CGI in some of like the big like broad scoping, sequences showing like the scope of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I chalk it up to Singer not being able to determine that kind of scale. Like, he's not the guy for an event movie. He's the guy for smaller things.
Yeah, and yet, like I said, like I enjoyed it a lot more on a second viewing. And I still say that there's all kinds of cool things you can do with it moving forward. I don't think that we've even remotely wrecked it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, going forward with the new cast and everything, I think there's great stuff to do. It's just as a singular entity, I don't think this movie's very good, and part of it is the directing.
But I had a hard time getting worked up about it. Like, I might have seemed worked up about things in this because I get really passionate whenever I talk about anything. I could talk about Mountain Dew, and I would be exactly the same way. But like, I was kind of indifferent to this first time around, and second time I think I watched it with an audience that enjoyed it more, which is part of why the experience was more fun. And like I said, Apocalypse was a lot less generic to me that round. Also, I adore the actress playing Storm. I wish she had more to do, but she's just fantastic.
Yeah, she's great. I love her. I love the accent too.
Also, I've seen people complain about Psylocke's costume. That like, yeah, okay, it's off the page and that's cool and all, but is it really appropriate for a Horseman costume? And this time around, I kind of thought that too.
Apparently, Olivia Munn petitioned to have that costume, so that wasn't.
No, I know.
So.
But I would have at least tried to compromise with her and have it be a costume that looked more like the other three, because Apocalypse has kind of a style he's going with, and then all of a sudden, and then the problem is that's Psylocke's costume when she's just being Psylocke, right? Like you've got Magneto has a Apocalypse Magneto costume, right?
Yeah, I mean she. Olivia Munn just annoys me with this movie because she talks about like how much like she didn't want to be in Deadpool because she didn't want to be a love interest, which that's fair. But then she's talking about how she learned all these cool sword tricks and how much she loves playing Psylocke as a character and all that, and she's nothing. Psylocke doesn't do a single thing in this movie with a sword that I can't do. It's really anticlimactic listening to her talk about that character and getting nothing.
Can you ride along the side of a building with your blade stabbed into it while you catch yourself while you fall from the sky, Steve?
If I had CGI like she did, I could do it. I can't have Eve do it for me.
Look, I've always wanted to see Psylocke in a movie. I think you could do some really fun things with her. I like her costume a lot. And like, I hesitate to say this because a lot of the time I don't know what this means, but in this case, it just hit me as looking like a cosplay costume. And like, cosplay's gotten so good, the cosplay looks like movie costumes a lot. This didn't feel like a movie. It looked like a girl doing cosplay to me. I don't know, but as much as I have always wanted to see Psylocke in a movie and was kind of excited that she was that she was in this movie before I saw it, why did she get to survive and we killed off Angel? Probably.
That's the thing. It's like, why do you do that with Angel? Like,
and you turn him into Archangel. You do the interesting thing from the very start.
Oh wait. See, don't you get it, Rasco? It's cool. Because it's ironic, because he has wings and he fell from the sky and blew up, but she doesn't have wings and she got to sort of see. It's like it's cool. It's like
here's how easy it is to make him not dead. Just have him like curl up into a ball with his like metal wings, and then like he survived, and like he's like, oh my god, and he leaves.
I love this comment. Ian McKee. Obviously, Psylocke brought her own costume to Horseman orientation, while the others had to rent from the company warehouse. Somebody else asked, and I don't usually read this kind of comment, but I think it's hilarious. Someone else wrote, did Olivia Munn petition for the boob window that the costume doesn't have in the comics? Like, it's gotta be just like the comics, but it's got a thing on it that isn't in the comics and is all like revealing and sexy and stuff. Like, why does it have to have that? Although I think there are versions of it that maybe do have that. I'm not sure, but anyway, that was funny. Oh, this is a great question, Mass. Let's go ahead and finish up here. And we've been going a long time, but this has been a fun conversation. And once again, sorry if we've gone too long, but I had awful lag at the beginning of this and was having a really difficult time understanding what was being said. So I allowed it to go a little bit longer because we finally got a groove. Mass Sci-Fi Fan, do you guys think this movie deserved all of its poor reviews, or were some of them exaggerated? I don't tend to read a lot of reviews, but I heard it got slammed by some people right before it came out pretty hard.
Yeah. I think it's better than the reviews are letting on.
I think it is too, and we have done a lot of complaining, but I think a lot of the good in this movie is kind of obvious and speaks for itself. I mean, it's very X-Men tone. It's very fun comic movie. It's good popcorn stuff. I mean, like, for anybody that's like, oh, Captain Logan, you said you enjoyed it a second time, but you didn't like talk about enough of the positives. It wasn't enough of the interesting stuff is the problem. Like, all of the things that are really good about this movie are things that have been good about X-Men movies before, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of those reviews were ranking it against the goals and comparing it to Batman v Superman, and I don't think it's that bad. It's an okay movie. I don't like it very much, but it's not X3. It's not X-Men Origins. It's just kind of meh.
It's really middle of the road. It's honestly what I would have expected X3 to be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, folks.
I'm really excited for the next X-Men movie, even though this one wasn't like fantastic. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I really want to see specifically Scott and Jean going forward. I don't know. I think that they cast them well. I liked both of the actors for that, and I thought they played their characters well, what little they were given. And I want to see them going forward. So I'm excited for the next movie too, because hopefully they'll be a main part of it.
Wow, Matt's fighting me in the comments. That's fun. Matt says, it's not good popcorn stuff. Well, to me anyways, the action scenes were not that fun. We had nothing like the Wolverine Deathstrike fight. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
And, I was going to make the point earlier that I don't think that Singer is really an action director, which is weird because these are action movies. I think that, I think that he, sometimes makes things look, kind of cool and stylistic, and I like camera placement and stuff sometimes. But I don't think he's really an action director.
Well, that's the thing about.
But then you're right. That Deathstrike fight is amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing about Days of Future Past. Though Days of Future Past doesn't have a lot of really high intensity action scenes that are memorable. It's got really cool, slow, well shot, suspenseful scenes, like the whole thing with Mystique when she jumps out the window and the bullet, and he's pulling the bullet out of her leg. That's a great scene, and those scenes are but it's weird because he does in any of the X-Men movies there hasn't really been a giant Age of Ultron battle in this movie, and this is kind of honestly the first time we've ever seen it on that scale in the X-Men franchise at least.
I hate to suggest this, and again, I really want to chalk stuff up to, and I'm not trying to pull my punches at all, I was just really happy with Singer for coming back because I love X2. Clearly, he knows I love X2. I don't mean me personally, I mean, fans of this franchise. And that's why he keeps kind of making it again, sort of, a little bit, pieces of it. But I really want to chalk stuff, a lot of stuff that's not working with this to it needed another year of production. I also can't help but wonder if, and I don't even want to say this, but I feel like I'm not doing my due diligence if I don't. I also am suspicious that he's not still on these because it gives him work. And the last few movies he's made, people haven't really liked very much. So it gives him a place to go.
I think that's exactly what it is.
If that happens,
he talks about it on those terms.
If that's does he really? Because if that's the case, well then I don't feel so bad. If you say
he gets excited about them, but he gets excited in the terms of along the terms of just yeah, I don't like what other people did, and I'm only focusing on this right now. He's being really dodgy about his own projects. It seems like he's acknowledged that people only like him when he's making X-Men movies. Man, it's hard to think that they won't get kind of stale after this if that's the case, if that's the attitude he's got, and especially if they rush him. He needs to just take his time and spend it, and that's not on him. That's on Fox. You can't tell me Fox didn't look at Days of Future Past and the numbers and say get it out for 2016. Yeah.
Or at least that's what I think is probably the case. Anyway, other final thoughts. Flo, do you have final thoughts?
Just that I think I liked this movie more than any of you guys did. I didn't talk a lot about it because, like you said, it's just far more interesting and easier to discuss things that you think are problematic. Because what do you say when you like something? I liked it. Okay, moving on. Especially when it's a movie like this that wasn't particularly deep. So that's why it's sort of middle of the road for me. I did really like it, though. There's just not a lot to say on the good end. I thought it was all passable and great, and I would even use the word meh, even if I mean it differently than Steve means it. It's just sort of like a good movie that I had fun watching, and I think I would like to watch again. But yeah, I just don't have a ton to say about it because it was all just very middle of the road, good, passable, I guess.
Yeah,
and you can quote me on that.
Yeah,
good, passable, I guess.
And you can put that on a fake DVD box and post it to Geek Pollution on Facebook.
Somebody get on that.
I gotta tell if you guys will permit me, I gotta tell the audience about this. So there have been a couple people, and I love them for this. They've been great. That have been posting these hilarious DVD boxes on Facebook and Twitter, and they go back to old videos that we've made, and they take quotes from us and they put them on a box. And this is a joke that goes back about a year on an old Primetime Crisis Live, when we used to do that show live, when we were talking about S.H.I.E.L.D. and some other things, and I called an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. I said my big praise of it was that it was reasonably paced, and then somebody took that and a couple other things that we say, and Steve's was I couldn't.
I tried to watch it 3 times.
I fell asleep 3 times.
It's so boring.
And some other things on a box and posted it on Twitter, and it's become kind of a trend with some of our regular viewers making these boxes. Well, my 6-year-old Jason picked up on this, and he took it. I wish I had it sitting right here. He took a piece of paper and he made one for this movie. And it said, so he wrote X-Men Apocalypse at the top. He misspelled apocalypse. It said X-Men Apocalypse, and and he drew Cyclops' eyes, and he wrote this out. And at the top, it said I'm trying to remember what mine was. Steve Baxey's was, I don't like X-Men movies. That was Steve, and he didn't even go back and make. He just made up quotes. I know what mine was. Mine was it said Captain Logan, I can't believe they put new people in here. And then Steve said, I don't like X-Men movies. And then it said Jason, Cyclops blew up Professor X's favorite tree, LOL.
That's awesome.
I thought that was pretty wonderful. Anybody else want to get any final thoughts before I answer a question real quick as mine?
I'll just, as final thought, put it on the DVD cover of what my review for this movie is. Would just be something along the lines of like mad, mediocre, or it exists.
Would you be quoting mediocre from Mad Max? Just like,
yes.
Mediocre.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. If they ever invent DVD cases that let you play sound effects as you read the quotes on the back, that's the sound effect.
Now everybody's quoting Jason from when he was 2 and he was making Bane videos. Lo, I really appreciate that you brought up. I feel like you say this real quick. That you brought up what happens when movies are just okay and you're trying to talk about them. Because you said that sometimes it's just not that interesting to talk about what you liked about a movie, and I feel the need, because we get comments about this sometimes, and I think people sometimes misread us and think that we have some kind of weird hidden agenda or something. We're just folks that are enjoying talking about movies, guys. That's it. We've all got our sensibilities and preconceived notions and stuff, so I'm not saying we don't have our biases. We're gonna have our biases, but nobody's paying us. Somebody I think very seriously said that they unsubscribed from our channel because they thought that I took a bribe from Disney to give Civil War a positive review early. Which
I don't understand, because I'm the one that works for Disney. Why would you be taking the bribe?
That's awesome. So I'm being really candid right now. I don't always address things like this, but I feel the need to bring this up and say that sometimes we will spend a lot of our time talking about what really worked in a movie because it was thought-provoking, because it made us think, and so that's the stuff that's coming up. And a movie like this, we were was not as thought-provoking to some of it, to I guess all of it. I mean, Lo really liked it, but she wasn't calling it thought-provoking. And so we weren't, we weren't pulling it apart and doing a Superhero Rewind-esque in-depth analysis. Once I sit down with a thing and start writing about it, sometimes I find more of that stuff, and it starts to come out more that way with what I do, but I still will have written reviews that are mostly criticisms, because that's how I felt about it. I didn't find a lot to like about it. So I just want people to understand that we don't have any agenda here. We're just talking about movies, and sometimes we love them, and sometimes we hate them, and sometimes it gets really nuanced, and it's everything in between. Red Letter Antilles wanted me to answer this question, and I'll use this as my final thoughts. He says, I didn't watch the film yet. Should I, despite its flaws? I love that as a closing question. And I would say that I love that you haven't seen it yet, but you spent 2 hours listening to us talk about it. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just came in and left that comment and left. But I would say if you have liked the X-Men movies on the whole in the past, there's a lot to enjoy in this, even if it's not a really good movie. So certainly, I would say yes. And I went a second time, not just because I had to do this, but because I genuinely wanted to watch it again. So it's not by any stretch of the imagination anything close to the worst thing I've seen this year. It's very, very middle of the road. Okay. So that's all I've got. Anything else? Anything else? Anybody else have anything else to add before we adjourn for the evening?
Nope.
All right, cool. Everybody, thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed our Spoilercast for X-Men Apocalypse. Leave comments. Let us know what you thought about this movie, and we will see you again next week at the same time, Sunday night at 8 Central Time, for another exciting episode of not Primetime Crisis. What am I talking about? We don't do that anymore. 0 Hour. We'll be talking about news and developments in pop culture throughout the week. I have been Captain Logan. This was Steve Baxey.
Good night, everybody.
The Disney Bride Taker.
Bye.
Hello. Jackson Rasco.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks again for being here, folks. We sure appreciate it. Once again, I was Captain Logan saying good night. Good night.